Chapter 2499. Don't worry, I didn't plan to kill you from the start because I'm not the one who wants to deal with you. Ning Yu instantly arrived before Lin Tai and said indifferently, "Not you." Lin Tai was slightly startled. Since Ning Yu didn't want to kill him, why did he charge at him? Lin Tai was not a foolish person. In his opinion, the reason why Ning Yu said this was entirely to numb him, and he wanted to get some useful information from him. After all, his status in the Sage Ming Empire was not considered low. In fact, it could even be said to be very high. He was only slightly lower than Lin Xian, who was in the Dao domain realm. If Ningyu knew what Lin Tai was thinking, he would probably laugh it off. To him, the reason why he did not kill Lin Tai was because of Lin Lang's request in the Red Fiend Sword. Lin Lang had said it before. Whether it was Lin Xian or Lin Tai, he would personally kill them. Ningyu and Lin Lang's relationship was so good, so he naturally wouldn't argue with him over these small matters. Stop guessing. You'll know soon enough. Ningyu raised his right hand and punched Lin Tai's chest. The huge force directly caused Lin Tai's 5 viscera and 6 bowels to fall apart. Go in. Ningyu did not waste his breath. With a thought, he opened the Red Devil Sword and stored Lin Tai inside. Why were you? It's you. As soon as he entered the Red Demon's Sword, Lin Tai saw someone he really didn't want to see. Lin Lang. At this time, Lin Lang looked at Lin Tai coldly and said in a solemn voice, "Didn't expect it, right? I, Lin Lang, am back again." "Little bastard, you actually didn't die." Lin Tai said furiously, "There's no longer a place for you in the entire Sage Ming Empire. If you know what's good for you, surrender as soon as possible. Otherwise, I'll let you know why flowers are so red." Ha ha ha. Hearing Lin Tai's words, Lin Lang couldn't help but raise his head and laugh maniacally. Even at this point in time, Lin Tai still hadn't realized his situation. Outside the Red Demon Sword, Lin Lang might not be a match for Lin Tai. In fact, even 2 Lin Langs would not be able to pose a threat to Lin Tai. However, this was the interior of the Red Demon Sword, and Lin Tai had already suffered serious injuries. Under such circumstances, naturally, Lin Lang could suppress Lin Tai. Whoosh! Ning Yu did not pay much attention to the internal affairs of the Red Demon Sword. He held the Red Demon Sword in his hand and rushed toward Ao Xing's battlefield. When the battle had just begun, Ao Xing was facing an expert at the intermediate stage of the Dao Advent realm. Now, Ao Xing was going against an expert at the peak of the Dao Advent realm. In a battle with a middle stage Dao Advent realm martial artist, Ao Xing could occupy the upper hand, and he could even easily kill them. But when battling a peak Dao Advent realm martial artist, Ao Xing was unable to occupy an absolute advantage. Although Ao Xing had the upper hand, it wasn't the absolute right hand. If the battle continued like this, Ao Xing might lose because he didn't have a real body. "Let me help you." Ning Yu got rid of his opponent, then rose from the ground and rushed to Ao Xing's battlefield. A mere celestial King Peak stage martial artist dares to behave atrociously in front of me. The peak Dao Advent realm martial artist that was battling Ao Xing was called Chen Hai. He casually glanced at Ning Yu before withdrawing his gaze. Ning Yu's cultivation was only at the peak celestial King Peak stage, so Chen Hai didn't think he was a threat to him. Swish! However, Chen Hai wasn't that stupid. He flicked his sleeve and threw out a cold light that blasted toward Ning Yu. Giving the enemy enough respect was the demeanor a martial artist should have. In fact, Chen Hai had no other choice. If he wanted to break through to the heaven or rival realm, he could only respect Ning Yu enough to prevent himself from failing miserably. As a Dao Advent realm expert of the Sage Ming Empire, he had seen many geniuses. Some genius martial artists were too arrogant and ultimately failed to break through. They could only stay at the Dao Advent realm for the rest of their lives, unable to break through to the heaven or rival realm and break through to the Emperor realm. Kill. Ning Yu gathered all the energy in his body on the red demon sword and slashed out with a backhand slash. Swish! 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 Ning Yu's sword collided with the cold light that Chun Hai threw out. The two collided. Countless shattering shock waves spread out in all directions. Fortunately, most of the battlefield was in the void. Otherwise, these shock waves would have caused some damage. Puff! Even so, Chun Hai's attack also made Ning Yu feel a pain in the area between his thumb and index finger. There's still a big gap between my strength and the peak of the Tao Advent realm. Ning Yu silently compared his strength with Chun Hai's and found that even if his strength doubled, he would definitely not be a match for Chun Hai, unless he could break through to the Tao domain realm. Only then would he have a chance to compete with the peak of the Tao Advent realm. Good chance. Although Ning Yu couldn't hurt Chun Hai, he didn't even get close to him. However, Ning Yu's action had bought enough time for Ao Xing. The experts fought. 1 second was enough. Swish! Ao Xing forcibly tore the void and appeared in front of Chun Hai. He clenched his right hand into a fist and smashed it toward Chun Hai's head with a violent gust of wind. In order to kill a human martial artist at the peak of the Tao Advent realm, Ao Xing's move could be said to be a continuous attack. He exerted all his strength. Oh no! Chun Hai's face changed dramatically. He was naturally not afraid of Ao Xing in a head-on fight. However, in order to resist Ning Yu's attack, he was slightly distracted. It was this 1 second of distraction that made him pay the price with his blood. Bang! Ao Xing suddenly came in front of him and punched him in the chest. The huge force directly sent him flying. If he hadn't stopped at the critical moment, he would probably have fallen to the ground. You've completely infuriated me. Chun Hai's face was cold. He shook his wrist and took out a white elixir from his bosom. An Emperor elixir. The elixir Chun Hai took out was a genuine Emperor elixir. Because he was a Tao Advent realm expert, Chun Hai had an Emperor elixir to save his life. Wait until I swallow this elixir, then it'll be your death. Chun Hai said fiercely. Swish! However, Chun Hai was just about to throw the elixir into his mouth, but he found that the elixir in his hand had disappeared. Where's my elixir? Chun Hai turned pale with fright when he lost the elixir. The elixir was his trump card. It was the trump card that determined whether he could recover to his peak state. Once he lost the elixir, he would become a fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Don't look for it. It's here. Ning Yu shook the white elixir in his hand and said, It's indeed an Emperor elixir. Thank you. You've helped me keep it for so long that I can't give it to you. I can only let Ao Xing kill you on my behalf. Ah! Chun Hai threw his head back and let out a hysterical roar. Run! Chun Hai's first thought was to run away as far as possible. Without the elixir, the energy in his body had been exhausted. At this time, he had become the weakest person in this area, not to mention Ao Xing. Even if Ning Yu made a move, he could easily kill him. What was the difference between staying here and courting death? Chapter 2500. Where are you going? Seeing that Chun Hai was trying to escape, Ao Xing was enraged. He had gone through untold hardships in order to fight Chun Hai to this point. Now, Ning Yu had given him a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. How could he let Chun Hai go? Swoosh! Ao Xing's figure flickered, chasing after Chun Hai at a terrifying speed. Damn it! Chun Hai looked back at Ao Xing as he fled. When he found that Ao Xing was getting closer and closer, he gritted his teeth and changed his direction, choosing the maple forest as his target. Obviously, Chun Hai knew that under normal circumstances, he would not be able to escape. If he wanted to leave, there was only one option, and that was to enter the maple forest. After all, the maple forest was extremely dangerous and had been sealed off by the giant rock. Chun Hai believed that Ao Xing would not dare to break in. Swoosh! As it turned out, Ao Xing indeed did not dare to break in. At the entrance of the maple forest, Ao Xing stopped. Looking at Chen Hai, who had already entered the maple forest, Ao Xing murmured, "Heaven's sins can be forgiven, but one's own sins cannot be forgiven." Ha ha ha! Seeing that Ao Xing did not chase after him, Chen Hai threw his head back and laughed wildly. He turned around and taunted, "Come at me if you have the guts. Come and kill me. As long as you don't kill me today, I will come back someday. I will grind your bones and scatter your ashes, then throw you into—" However, before Chen Hai could finish his mocking words, he stopped abruptly, because he realized, above his head, a giant monster suddenly appeared. From the aura exuded by this giant monster, Chen Hai could almost conclude that the monster's real cultivation was at the boundary Emperor realm. Roar! The giant monster roared, opened its mouth, and swallowed Chen Hai into its belly. At the moment before death, Chen Hai regretted entering the maple forest instead of surrendering to Ao Xing. Of course, Chen Hai soon became food in the giant monster's stomach and died. After easily killing Chen Hai, the gigantic creature glanced at Ningyu and Ao Xing. Then it drilled into the void and disappeared. Bad news. The change in the giant monster's expression fell into Ao Xing's eyes. What happened? Ningyu was puzzled. The rock in the maple leaf forest should know who I am. Ao Xing took a deep breath and said, "After we enter the core region of the Quasi-Emperor's secret realm, we won't go anywhere. We'll go straight to the last level." The last level? Ningyu frowned. The core region is different from the outer region. The outer region has 18 mountain ranges, whereas the core region only has 9 layers. Ao Xing explained, "I know of a teleportation array. As long as we activate the teleportation array, we can cross the first 8 floors and directly fight our way to the last floor." So realistic? Ningyu was dumbfounded. Unexpectedly, there were transportation formations in the periphery of the Quasi-Emperor region and the core region. The Holy Ming Empire used the teleportation array to directly reach the entrance of the core region. As for Ao Xing, he wanted to activate the teleportation portal to reach the final floor and snatch the great emperor's spiritual liquid. Something was not right. Ao Xing was probably after the main body, not the great emperor's spiritual liquid. "It's you." Ningyu was still conversing with Ao Xing when he suddenly heard a loud shout. He turned his head to look. A bald quasi-emperor was looking at them. Without a doubt, this bald quasi-emperor was the quasi-emperor expert in the maple forest back then. In the battle just now, the bald quasi-emperor retreated to the rear to recuperate because he was injured. After a period of recuperation, although the bald quasi-emperor had not recovered to his peak state, he had recovered by 20%. After recovering by 20%, the bald quasi-emperor's battle prowess was comparable to a heaven-receiving expert. Moreover, the bald quasi-emperor's strength was still constantly recovering. As long as he was given a period of time, he could recover to the true quasi-emperor realm. Go. Sensing the aura emitted from the bald quasi-emperor, Ao Xing's expression changed. He grabbed Ningyu and rushed toward the entrance of the core region. "Haha, the core region has not opened yet. I want to see how you guys are going to enter." The bald quasi-emperor crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked at Ningyu and Ao Xing with interest. The bald quasi-emperor did not believe that Ningyu and Ao Xing could enter the core region. After all, there were very strict conditions to open the core region. Without meeting the conditions, even a quasi-emperor expert could not do it. Rustle. With his hands behind his back, the bald quasi-emperor curled the corners of his mouth and walked step by step toward Ningyu and Ao Xing. As he was sure that Ningyu and the others could not open the core region, the bald quasi-emperor's speed was not too fast. To put it nicely, he wanted to give Ningyu a little pressure and let Ningyu experience the fear of impending death. Crack! However, The bald quasi-emperor had guessed correctly that Ning Yu could not open the core region, but he had not guessed whether Ao Xing could open the core region. The energy in Ao Xing's body surged out and wrapped around his hands as he repeatedly struck the bronze stone door at the entrance of the core region. Every time Ao Xing struck, the bronze stone door would definitely emit a cracking sound. Crack, crack, crack. After Ao Xing had struck with all his might for about 3 seconds, the bronze stone door at the entrance of the core region suddenly split open. Follow me. The bronze stone door split open, and Ao Xing expressionlessly pulled Ning Yu and entered. I'm coming. At the back. The bald quasi-emperor cursed when he saw Ning Yu and Ao Xing enter the core region. He could not have imagined it. A Dao Advent expert and a peak immortal king could actually open the bronze stone door. I'll go too. The bald quasi-emperor was not a fool. He glanced at the main battlefield. Then his figure flashed, and he followed Ning Yu and Ao Xing into the core region. Bang! The moment the bald quasi-emperor's front foot entered the core region, the bronze stone door behind him suddenly closed. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Even though there were quasi-emperors in midair who had discovered the situation, they could not escape. By the time they stopped fighting and arrived in front of the bronze stone door, it had already closed. Damn it! These quasi-emperors were exceptionally furious and immediately launched attacks in an attempt to blast open the stone door. Unfortunately, no matter how they attacked, the bronze stone door remained intact and did not even leave a mark. Helpless, they could only return to the battlefield and kill to their heart's content. In the core region, Ning Yu and Ao Xing advanced at full speed and soon arrived at a dilapidated temple. Throw all the two-realm stones in. Ao Xing looked at Ning Yu and said, This dilapidated temple is a teleportation formation, and the key to activating it is the two-realm stone. Are you sure you're joking? Ning Yu asked doubtfully. Ha ha ha. I can testify that he's not joking. Before Ao Xing could answer, the bald quasi-emperor threw his head back and laughed. There are records in the ancient books of the sage Ming Empire that there's a dilapidated temple in the core region and that the temple itself is a teleportation formation. At that time I thought it was nonsense, but now it seems that the records are right. Chapter 2501. Humph! Ao Xing glanced behind the bald quasi-emperor. Seeing that no one followed, he snorted coldly. You dare to be so arrogant alone. I think you're tired of living. Ha ha ha. The bald quasi-emperor seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world. He first threw his head back and laughed wildly, then said coldly, Although I haven't recovered to my peak state with my current strength, I can even easily kill a heaven-receiving realm expert. You two trash. One is at the Dao Advent realm. The other is at the peak of the Immortal King realm. I can kill you with one hand. Is that so? As the bald quasi-emperor's voice faded, Ao Xing took a step forward and suddenly transformed into his original form. Rumble. At this moment, Ao Xing transformed into his original form. A true dragon, an ancient true dragon. It's the dragon race. The bald quasi-emperor was not afraid because Ao Xing was a dragon. On the contrary, he was very excited. The dragon race was full of treasures. He was the only outsider here. If he could kill Ao Xing, then Ao Xing, this dragon, would belong to him alone. With a little use, he even had the opportunity to break through to the middle stage of the first rank quasi-emperor. Taking a deep breath, the bald quasi-emperor said sinisterly, Tell me, how do you want to die? Take this. Ao Xing could not be bothered to talk nonsense with the bald quasi-emperor. After transforming into his original form, his strength increased a little again. Originally, he could only contend with a martial artist at the peak of the Dao Advent realm, but now he already possessed the ability to fight with a heaven-receiving realm expert. Rumble. A great battle instantly broke out. The bald quasi-emperor and Ao Xing fought in the core area, fighting until the sky darkened and the void trembled. But even so, it was impossible to determine a victor in a short period of time. Very well, you've completely infuriated me. The bald quasi-emperor forced Ao Xing back with one move, his eyes cold, and said coldly, I will let you know what is the strength that a quasi-emperor expert should have. Rumble. As he spoke, the bald quasi-emperor threw all the medicinal pills he had into his mouth and chewed them. As the medicinal pills entered his mouth, the aura of the bald quasi-emperor began to soar. In a short period of time, the bald quasi-emperor had soared from the early stage of the heaven-receiving realm to the middle stage. At the initial stage of the heaven-receiving state, the bald quasi-emperor and Ao Xing were evenly matched. Now that he had recovered to the middle stage of the heaven-receiving realm, he naturally had an overwhelming advantage against Ao Xing Piu. Under the attacks of the bald quasi-emperor, Ao Xing was forced to retreat step by step and was even pushed to the entrance of the temple. Damn it, Ao Xing's expression was extremely ugly. When had he ever suffered this kind of humiliation? He had thought that he would be able to contend against the bald quasi-emperor after transforming into his true form. But who would have thought that the bald quasi-emperor would have so many emperor-level pills on him? The effects of emperor-grade medicinal pills were extremely good. An emperor-grade medicinal pill was able to allow a peak Dao Advent realm martial artist to instantly replenish his exhausted energy. Although the bald quasi-emperor had recovered to the heaven-receiving realm, he still had a lot of emperor-rank medicinal pills. With so many emperor-rank medicinal pills, he could completely recover to his peak state. Even if he could only recover to the intermediate stage of the heaven-taking stage now, if he was given a period of time, recovering to his peak state was something that would happen sooner or later. Hand over the dragon core, dragon blood, dragon tendons, dragon skin, dragon lungs, and dragon heart, and I can spare your life. The bald quasi-emperor said fiercely as he suppressed Ao Xing. Let me give you a word of advice. It's best not to play tricks and try to escape. My patience is limited. Don't resist. Let my energy enter your body. Ning Yu did not feel angry because of the bald quasi-emperor's words, because now he did not even have the time to be angry. Ning Lu's voice suddenly sounded in his ears. It should be known that, ever since Ning Lu devoured the World Tree, he had not contacted him. Now that Ning Lu contacted him, didn't that mean that Ning Lu had already devoured the World Tree? Boom! Ning, you did not think too much about it. He directly opened up his mind, allowing Ning Lu's energy to enter his body. Energy entered his body. Ning Yu's aura began to soar rapidly. In a short period of time, Ning Yu's aura had already soared from the peak Immortal King realm to the peak Dao Domain realm. Furthermore, it continued to soar. Bang! Accompanied by a muffled sound. Ning Yu's aura had reached the Dao Advent realm. Bang! Bang! Another few muffled sounds rang out. Ning Yu's aura directly reached the peak Dao Advent realm from the early Dao Advent realm, and was only one step away from the heaven-receiving realm. Kill! The soaring aura made Ning Yu full of confidence. Holding the red devil sword, he charged toward the bald quasi-emperor. The bald quasi-emperor was very strong. After devouring so many medicinal pills, he had already recovered to the middle heaven-receiving realm. However, Ning Yu was not a pushover. He slightly adapted to the energy in his body, then injected the energy into the red devil sword and slashed out with a backhand. Swish! The power of this sword was extremely powerful, not to mention a martial artist of the middle heaven-receiving realm. Even a martial artist of the late heaven-receiving realm or the peak heaven-receiving realm dared not say that they could block it 100%. How is this possible? Seeing the sword light that Ning Yu slashed out, the bald quasi-emperor's eyes widened, his face full of disbelief. Was it so easy to advance to the heaven-receiving realm? At that time, when he advanced from the peak of the immortal king realm to the heaven-receiving realm, he spent an entire 10,000 years. This was considered very rare in the sage Ming Empire. Some people spent tens of thousands of years to advance from the peak of the immortal king stage to the heaven-receiving stage, but they were still unable to reach it. Ningyu, this freak, in just a few seconds, his aura had soared to the heaven-receiving realm. How could the bald quasi-emperor not be shocked? Shock was one thing. The bald quasi-emperor did not panic. He knew that the reason why Ningyu's aura had soared was because he had borrowed external force. As long as he could hold on until the external force dissipated, Ningyu would become a fish on the chopping board, at his mercy. Taking a deep breath, the bald quasi-emperor began to burn his blood essence. Chi chi chi. As his essence blood continued to burn, the bald quasi-emperor's aura actually showed signs of soaring once again. However, at this moment, Ningyu wielded the red demon sword and arrived in front of him. There was no other way. The bald quasi-emperor had no choice but to give up on his soaring aura and clash head-on with Ningyu. Kacha! Ah! 2 consecutive sounds rang out. The first was the sound of the bald quasi-emperor's fist shattering. The second was the hysterical scream of the bald quasi-emperor. After succeeding in one move, Ningyu did not stop. Instead, he continued to pour energy into the red demon sword and slashed at the bald quasi-emperor. When he attacked just now, Ning Lu transmitted a large amount of energy to him. According to Ning Lu, this energy was energy that he did not want and could be used as he pleased. Hence, Ningyu activated the energy without holding back, raised the red demon sword, and slashed at the bald quasi-emperor. In the beginning, Ningyu had planned to use the energy he had obtained from the blue-robed general. After all, that energy was comparable to the full-force attack of a quasi-emperor expert. However, the energy that Ning Lu transmitted to him made him change his mind. The energy that he had obtained from the blue-robed general could be used next time. Now he could use the energy that Ning Lu had given him to deal with the bald quasi-emperor. No, the bald quasi-emperor could not help but cry out as the red flying sword in his eyes continued to expand. Uft! However, the bald quasi-emperor's roar clearly meant that no one would come to help him. The red demon sword swiftly descended and slashed at the bald quasi-emperor's heart. Swallow, oh no! However, just as Ningyu was about to use the red demon sword to swallow the bald quasi-emperor, his expression changed drastically. He hurriedly withdrew the red demon sword and rapidly retreated. This book comes from Chapter 2502. Swoosh! Ningyu had only taken a few steps back when the void suddenly split open. The void suddenly split open, and a huge beam of cold light descended from the 9 heavens, ruthlessly smashing toward the bald quasi-emperor. Rumble! The cold light smashed onto the bald quasi-emperor's head, instantly causing him to explode. A huge shock wave spread in all directions. Chi! Chi! Ningyu hurriedly used the excess energy in his body to set up a small energy shield around him to withstand the shock wave. A while later, Ningyu heaved a sigh of relief when the shock wave completely dissipated. However, Ningyu did not completely relax at this time. Instead, his eyes were fixed on the black figure that appeared not far away. Ningyu sensed an extremely familiar aura from the black figure. Haha, long time no see. The black-clad martial artist smiled at Ningyu. You didn't expect us to meet here, did you? Indeed. Ningyu took a deep breath and looked at the black-clad martial artist. The third son of the Blood Sky Battle Emperor, the sky demon known as the Third Young Master, actually appeared in the quasi-emperor mysterious realm. I'm very curious. Aren't you afraid of being killed by the quasi-emperors outside? Ningyu could tell. There were no hidden quasi-emperors around the Third Young Master, and the third young master's cultivation base was only at the heaven receiving realm. As for Ning Yu's cultivation base, it had soared to the Tao domain realm. There was no other reason. Ning Lu had given him too much energy. Apart from some used to kill the bald quasi-emperor, he had devoured the rest. After devouring so much energy, his cultivation base naturally soared from the peak of the immortal king realm to the Tao domain realm. However, even the Tao domain realm was still 2 small levels lower than the third young master. Those trash outside won't be able to enter in a short time with the bronze stone door blocking the way. The corners of the third young master's mouth curled up slightly as he waved the folding fan in his hand. As for you, Ning Yu, I have a whole new level of respect for you. Consider submitting to me, and I can provide you with a large amount of power of faith. As he spoke, the third young master flicked his wrist and took out a jade bottle. Hiss! Looking at the power of faith in the jade bottle, even Ning Yu could not help but gasp. There were too many of them, so many that it was terrifying. Ning Yu was certain. If he devoured all the faith energy within the jade bottle, then his cultivation would at least be able to advance from the initial stage of the Tao domain realm to the Tao advent realm, and it was even to the extent that it was extremely likely for him to advance to the peak of the Tao advent realm. However, although Ning Yu wanted the power of faith, he would not rely on this so-called third young master. The third young master was a sky fiend while he was a human. Humans and sky fiends had been irreconcilable enemies since ancient times. Asking Ning Yu to submit to the third young master was no different from asking him to die. If you want to fight, then let's fight. What's with all this nonsense? At this time, Ao Xing had already more or less recovered. He transformed into a human form, flew to Ning Yu's side, and said to the third young master, "In ancient times I've killed countless quasi-emperor level heavenly demons. A heaven-receiving realm heavenly demon like you, I can kill them with a flip of my hand." Haha! The third young master was not angered by Ao Xing's words. On the contrary, he smiled faintly and continued, "You can choose not to submit to me, but I have to tell you something. The entire quasi-emperor mystic realm has been surrounded by the Skyfiend army, and the 100 forest domain of the 8 southern regions is also under attack by the Skyfiends. If you want to die, I will not stop you. If you are willing to submit to me, I am naturally very happy." Hearing the third young master's words, Ning Yu's expression changed slightly. Had the Skyfiends begun to attack the 100 forest domain? He remembered very clearly that only one entrance of the 8 southern regions had been breached by the Skyfiends. Could it be that the Skyfiend army had entered through that entrance and had already reached the 100 forest domain? The more he thought about it, the more Ning Yu felt that it was impossible. After all, every domain had quasi-emperor experts. In the 100 forest domain, the alliance of the 9 major factions was enough to gather dozens of quasi-emperors. There would definitely be many quasi-emperor experts in that conquered domain. The third young master's words were clearly to numb him and Ao Xing. "Tell me, what do you want?" Ning Yu regained his composure and said, "If Ao Xing and I work together, we might be able to kill you. I know that you are very powerful." The third young master's lips curled up as he said, "But I have to tell you that I am not the same as that useless, bald quasi-emperor. Cut the crap. Just tell me, what do you want?" Ning Yu interrupted the third young master's words and said indifferently, "Straightforward." The third young master tossed the jade bottle to Ning Yu and said, "I want to work together with you to activate the transportation formation and go to the 9th floor of the core region to obtain the Emperor's spiritual liquid." Oh, Ning Yu caught the jade bottle and scanned it with his perception. Then he said, "Don't you think that you are very powerful? Why don't you activate the transportation formation yourself?" "You can ask Ao Xing about this," the third young master said as he pointed at Ao Xing. Ning Yu looked at Ao Xing, hesitated for a moment before he said, To activate the transportation formation, not only do we need the 2 realm stone, but we also need 3 experts above the Tao Advent realm. Otherwise, we won't be able to activate the transportation formation. I see. Ningyu came to a realization. No wonder the 3rd young master gave him the power of faith. It turned out that he wanted him to cultivate quickly and break through to the Tao Advent realm. Russell, the 3rd young master, did not care about Ningyu's thoughts. He found a place and sat down cross-legged. The 3rd young master knew very well that Ningyu would not reject him and would activate the transportation formation with him. The 3rd young master was right. Ning, you checked the power of faith in the jade bottle and found nothing wrong with it. Then, Ning Yu poured the power of faith into his mouth without hesitation. As Ning Yu had obtained the cultivation method of the power of faith from the blue-robed general, his cultivation speed was very fast. Drip, drip. As time went by, Ning Yu's cultivation started to soar rapidly. In the blink of an eye, half an hour passed. In this half an hour, Ning Yu refined all the power of faith in the jade bottle. His cultivation also advanced from the early stage Tao Domain Realm to the peak Tao Domain Realm. He was just 1 step away from the Tao Advent Realm. Give me some more power of faith. Ningyu stood up and said to the 3rd young master, the power of faith you gave me is too little. I can't break through to the Tao Advent Realm. My crystal, the 3rd young master, nearly died from anger. The power of faith he gave to Ningyu was enough for an ordinary martial artist to advance from the Tao Domain Realm to the Tao Advent Realm or even the peak Tao Advent Realm. Ningyu, on the other hand, he only advanced to the peak Tao Domain Realm and did not even reach the Tao Advent Realm. One last point. The 3rd young master gritted his teeth and took out another jade bottle, tossing it to Ningyu. He had no choice. He could only rely on Ningyu to activate the transportation formation. The 3rd young master had already made up his mind. When they reached the 9th level of the core region, he would take the initiative to get rid of Ningyu and then use a secret technique to force out the power of faith. If the 3rd young master thought so, wasn't Ningyu the same? The reason why Ningyu did not advance to the Tao Advent Realm was because he gave a portion of the power of faith to Ning Lu. After Ning Lu devoured the world tree, his cultivation gradually stabilized and reached the peak Tao Domain Realm. Chapter 2503. Qi. After Ning Lu advanced to the early stage Tao Advent Realm, he no longer consumed the power of faith. That was because Ning Yu was going to break through to the Tao Advent Realm. The 3rd young master definitely had a lot of power of faith on him. However, he was not a fool. If Ningyu asked him for more, he probably would not give it to him. Who was he trying to fool? With so much power of faith, even trash could break through to the Tao Advent Realm, let alone a genius like Ningyu. The 3rd young master might pretend not to know once or twice. Under such circumstances, even if the 3rd young master did not go to the 9th level, he probably would not provide Ningyu with the power of faith. Ningyu was very clear about this. He circulated his spell and started to refine the power of faith with all his might. Time passed. Ningyu's aura was slowly increasing. Another half an hour passed. Bang! Accompanied by a muffled sound. Ningyu's aura directly soared from the peak of the Tao Domain Realm to the Tao Advent Realm. Whoosh! After he advanced, Ningyu heaved a sigh of relief, and then he said to the 3rd young master, "Thank you for your faith energy. If I didn't have it, then it would probably take an extremely long time for me to advance to the Tao Advent Realm. I'm not trying to help you." The 3rd young master said indifferently, "Don't waste time. Hurry up and prepare to activate the teleportation array." Swoosh! As he spoke, the 3rd young master flicked his wrist and threw out tens of thousands of 2 realm stones. Swoosh! Swoosh! Ningyu and Ao Xing did not stay idle. They also threw the 2 realm stones on them into the dilapidated temple. I don't think you guys need me to tell you the method to activate the teleportation array, right? The third young master looked at Ningyu and Ao Xing. Of course not. Ao Xing's heart stirred, and he told Ningyu what he needed to pay attention to. Begin. As Ao Xing's voice fell, the third young master waved his hands and suddenly attacked one of the array eyes. Boom! Boom! Ningyu and Ao Xing chose one of the array eyes and started attacking with all their might. The method to activate the teleportation formation in the dilapidated temple was extremely simple. As long as the array core was blasted open and the 2-world stone was shattered, the energy would be injected back into the array core, and the rundown temple's teleportation array would be activated. So powerful? Ningyu's fist landed on the eye of the formation, and the huge rebound force sent him flying several meters away. Only now did Ningyu understand the third young master's actions. It was impossible for the third young master to activate the teleportation array by himself. After he advanced to the Tao Advent realm, his overall strength had increased by a few times. But even so, even with his full strength, he was unable to blast open the formation core. Shaking his head, Ningyu did not think too much about this period. Since he had already decided to activate the teleportation array, he could not give up halfway. Although it was difficult to blast open the teleportation array core, Ningyu would not give up so easily. A steady stream of energy was injected into his fist as he bombarded the array eye. Drip! Drip! Time was ticking away. 3 array eyes, apart from Ao Xing, who was slightly slower. Both Ningyu and the third young master were getting faster and faster. Crack! Crack! 10 minutes passed. Ningyu and the third young master clenched their fists at the same time and bombarded the array eye in front of them. 2 crisp sounds rang out consecutively. The array eye that Ningyu and the third young master bombarded shattered on the spot. Crack! Following closely behind, Ao Xing started to be ruthless. He also punched the array eye, completely shattering the array eye that was on the verge of collapse. Shatter the 2-world stone! The third young master raised his head and roared, directly shattering the 2-world stone in the rundown temple. The shattered 2-world stone had a steady flow of energy. The third young master was quick to react. He grabbed a third of the energy and guided it into the array eye. At the side, Ningyu and Ao Xing also began to go all out. Each of them grabbed a third of the energy and injected it into the array eye. Boom! When the 3 streams of energy were injected into the array eye, the 3 array eyes instantly became undamaged. Moreover, the array eyes seemed to be fusing together. Enter the rundown temple and maintain the stability of the array eyes. Ao Xing's expression changed, and he said hurriedly, "Once the array eyes are stable, the teleportation formation will be activated." Swoosh! The moment he said that, Ao Xing was the first to rush into the rundown temple. Then Ningyu and the third young master also entered the dilapidated temple. Crack! Crack! With the hard work of Ningyu and the others, the 3 array eyes fused together in just half an hour. Shio! The array eyes fused, and the teleportation formation in the rundown temple was activated. Ningyu and Ao Xing only felt their vision turn black, and then they lost consciousness. God knew how long had passed. Ningyu and the others suddenly regained consciousness. So dark. The first thing Ningyu said when he opened his eyes was that it was so dark. At that moment, he was in a pitch-black environment. Ningyu released his perception power, wanting to detect the surrounding situation. Helplessly, he discovered that there seemed to be a soul force barrier around him. His perception power could only advance tens of meters, and then it could not move forward. And within these tens of meters, he actually could not find Ao Xing and the third young master. This made him a little frightened. After all, this was the 9th level of the core area of the Quasi-Emperor Mystic Realm. The degree of danger Even quasi-emperor powerhouses had to be very careful. It was not a good sign to lose contact with Ao Xing here. Taking a deep breath, Ning Yu tried hard to calm himself down. Ao Xing was not here. The third young master was not here. He had to rely on himself for the following matters. After calming himself down, Ning Yu moved his feet and started to slowly walk forward. He wanted to personally investigate what was going on in front of him. In a pitch-black illusion, Ning Yu naturally did not dare to move forward at full speed. After walking for an hour, maybe 2 hours, a ray of light appeared in Ning Yu's sight. Ning Yu revealed a joyful expression. There was light, which meant that he was about to walk out of this damn place. Humans had always pursued the light. Ning Yu followed the direction of the light, and after walking for a full 3 hours, he finally confirmed what the light was. The light was emitted by a stone. This stone was only the size of a palm, and it looked very ordinary. Tao Comprehension Stone. Ning Yu looked at the stone carefully and discovered that there were 3 small words on the back of the stone. What is Tao Comprehension Stone? Ning Yu was puzzled. From the words, Tao Comprehension Stone could deepen one's understanding of the great Tao, and it might even be able to condense a great Tao. But Ning Yu was very clear. Condensing a great Tao was extremely difficult, and a mere Tao Comprehension Stone should not be able to help him condense a great Tao. Let's see if the devouring great Tao can devour it. Ning Yu used the devouring great Tao in his body and moved slightly closer to the Tao Comprehension Stone. Kacha! Just as the devouring great Tao approached the Tao Comprehension Stone, it suddenly exerted force and swallowed the stone. It can really swallow it. Ning Yu was slightly shocked. He was just testing it out. But to think that the devouring great Tao could really devour the Tao Comprehension Stone. After devouring the Tao Comprehension Stone, the strength of the devouring great Tao seemed to have increased. Originally, after devouring Lin Xian's great Tao, the devouring great Tao was ranked around 950th on the 3000 Tao ranking. Now that it devoured a Tao Comprehension Stone, the ranking of the devouring great Tao had soared from 950th to 940th. Chapter 2504. Ning Yu was overjoyed. Although it would be harder for the devouring Tao to increase its ranking further, the Tao Comprehension Stone should be able to increase its ranking by 4 or 5 ranks. He reined in his thoughts for a moment. Ning Yu moved his feet and continued walking forward. Since there was a Tao Comprehension Stone, it meant that there was a second and third one. As expected, Ning Yu encountered another Tao Comprehension Stone after walking for more than 10 minutes. After devouring this Tao Comprehension Stone, the ranking of the devouring Tao soared to 931. In the following period of time, Ning Yu did not think of leaving the pitch-black area. Instead, he continued to search for Tao Comprehension Stones. He searched for 10 hours. Ning Yu finally stopped. There was no other reason. He had already walked out of the pitch-black area and arrived at a dense forest. In 10 hours, Ning Yu found a total of 20 Tao Comprehension Stones. There were big and small Tao Comprehension Stones. The big ones could even increase the ranking of the devouring Tao by 20 or 30 ranks. The small ones could only increase the ranking of the devouring Tao by 2 or 3 ranks. The 20 Tao Comprehension Stones added together caused the ranking of the devouring Tao to soar from 950th to 800th, from 950th to 800th. It had to be said that the rise of the devouring Tao had solved some of Ning Yu's problems. Originally, he had advanced to the early stage Tao Advent realm. His overall strength could contend with and even kill a peak stage Tao Advent realm expert. But now, although his cultivation was still at the early stage Tao Advent realm, the increase in the ranking of the devouring Tao had greatly increased his strength. At this moment, he could easily kill an early stage or even middle stage heaven arrival realm martial artist. In other words, he could easily kill the third young master if he encountered him again. Of course, the premise of all this was that the third young master's cultivation had not increased, and he had not encountered any fortuitous encounters. Otherwise, Ning Yu would still not be a match for the third young master. After all, this was the 9th level of the core area. There were many fortuitous encounters. If he could find Dao comprehension stones, the third young master would be able to find other good things. After sorting out his thoughts, Ning Yu withdrew the devouring Dao and started walking towards the forest. Hiss! However, as soon as Ning Yu's right foot stepped into the forest, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He didn't even dare to put his right foot down. Quasi-Emperor pressure. Ning Yu thought to himself. In the depths of the forest, an extremely terrifying pressure suddenly pressed down on him. This pressure far surpassed that of an ordinary first-stage quasi-emperor. It was extremely likely that it had reached the level of a third-stage quasi-emperor. How could Ning Yu not be surprised? With his strength, he could contend against a heaven-receiving realm expert. But if he encountered a quasi-emperor, especially a third-rank quasi-emperor, he probably would not even have the qualifications to escape. Fortunately, this pressure was fleeting and did not linger on his body for too long. Even so, Ning Yu still felt great pressure. Strength. He had to increase his strength as soon as possible. The initial stage, Dao Advent Realm, was far from enough. A long time after the pressure disappeared, Ning Yu's right foot finally landed. Withdrawing his aura, Ning Yu did not dare to be careless as he slowly traversed through the forest. Lin Lang, where is the great emperor's spiritual liquid you mentioned? As Ning Yu walked, he began to communicate with Lin Lang in the Red Devil Sword. There was only one purpose for coming to the 9th level of the core area, and that was to find enough Great Emperor's spiritual liquid. The Great Emperor's spiritual liquid was a kind of precious liquid for cultivation. Lin Lang needed it, but Ning Yu needed it more. If there was enough Great Emperor's spiritual liquid, Ning Yu could say without exaggeration that he could easily advance to the heaven-receiving realm. He could even touch the threshold of a first-stage quasi-emperor. The Great Emperor's spiritual liquid is in the quasi-emperor palace. Lin Lang replied in the Red Devil Sword, "This forest is called the quasi-emperor forest. The quasi-emperor palace is in the center of the forest and occupies a very large area. You only need to continue forward, and you should be able to see the quasi-emperor palace in a few hours." Quasi-emperor palace? Ning Yu was slightly stunned. There seemed to be nothing wrong with building a quasi-emperor palace in the quasi-emperor forest. Withdrawing his aura, Ning Yu began to walk toward the center of the forest. Anyway, Lin Lang would not lie to him. If he continued forward, even if he could not find the quasi-emperor palace, he should be able to find other things. Great Emperor's spiritual fruit. As it turned out, the quasi-emperor forest was indeed a treasure land. After walking for half an hour, Ning Yu found an extremely precious fruit. Great Emperor's spiritual fruit. Compared to the Great Emperor's spiritual liquid, the effect of the Great Emperor's spiritual fruit was slightly weaker. However, the Great Emperor's spiritual fruit was also a target of competition in the outside world. Ning Yu did not act rashly. Usually, such a precious fruit would definitely be guarded by a powerful demonic beast. Ning Yu hid in the surroundings and concealed his aura, quietly observing. Dong! Dong! About 10 minutes later, a huge demonic beast came from afar. Although the demonic beast was huge, its speed was not slow. 3 steps became 2, and it soon landed beside the Great Emperor's spiritual fruit. The huge demonic beast used its nose to sniff the spiritual fruit, and then leaned to the side, as if waiting for the Great Emperor's spiritual fruit to ripen. This is troublesome. Ning Yu felt a headache coming on. The cultivation base of the huge demonic beast was early stage heaven arrival state. He was not afraid of a demonic beast of this level, but he was afraid that the battle would attract other demonic beasts. After all, with his strength, it was difficult to kill the huge demonic beast in a short period of time. Let me try. Just when Ning Yu was feeling troubled, Ning Lu's voice sounded in his ears. Swoosh! Then, Ning Lu's figure flashed and swept out from the red fiend sword. After devouring the world tree and a large amount of power of faith, Ning Lu's current cultivation base had stabilized at early stage Dao arrival state. Although Ning Lu's cultivation base was only early stage Dao arrival state, Ning Yu dared not guarantee that he could defeat him. The stronger his cultivation base, the more things Ning Lu would awaken. Who knew what trump cards Ning Lu had? Previously, when Ning Lu advanced to the Immortal King realm, he had a few more Immortal Sage talismans on him. Now that he had advanced to early stage Dao arrival state, there must be a lot of good things on him. Ning Yu guessed correctly. Ning Lu shook his wrist and took out 2 silver talismans. Waving the silver talismans, Ning Lu explained, "This is an invisibility talisman. Not only can it hide the body, it can also hide the aura. Unless it's a rank 5 quasi-emperor, otherwise no one will be able to discover it." There's such a good thing. Ning Yu was taken aback. Then he received an invisibility talisman and stuck it on Ning Lu. In an instant, Ning Lu vanished before Ning Yu's eyes, and even his aura vanished. It's really so miraculous. Ning Yu's pupils constricted. With this good thing, wouldn't sneak attacking quasi-emperor powerhouses be easy in the future? In a head-on fight, Ning Yu was not a match for a quasi-emperor powerhouse. Even a peak-level heaven arrival state martial artist could defeat him. But as long as he stuck the invisibility talisman, he could quietly arrive beside a quasi-emperor powerhouse. Under the circumstances of attacking with all his strength, he might be able to kill a quasi-emperor powerhouse. Chapter 2505. Don't be too happy. An invisibility talisman only lasts for 1 minute, and I only have 4 invisibility talismans on me. Ning Lu interrupted Ning Yu's thoughts. 1 minute. Unless it was a sneak attack, he wouldn't have the time to use it in a normal fight. Even if he did, the quasi-emperor experts would notice. Don't worry, 1 minute is enough. Ning Yu didn't think much of it. So what if it was a minute? Don't underestimate this minute. It was a sneak attack anyway. Even if it was just 1 second, it would be crucial. Something's wrong. Suddenly, Ning Yu's expression changed, and he hurriedly said, "You only have 4 invisibility talismans. Why did you use 2 at once?" What a waste. It was really a waste. Even if the Emperor's spirit fruit was extremely precious, there was no need to use 2 invisibility talismans. You can't catch the wolf without sacrificing the child. Ning Lu stomped his feet and immediately rushed towards the Emperor's spirit fruit. Ning Yu stomped his feet and followed closely. Swish! Swish! Ning Yu and Ning Lu's speed was very fast, and in the blink of an eye, they passed by the Emperor's spirit fruit. Among them, Ning Yu opened the red demon sword and put the Emperor's spirit fruit inside. Roar! As soon as Ning Yu kept the Emperor's spirit fruit, the giant demonic beast raised its head and roared. It had spent a lot of effort to find an Emperor's spirit fruit in order to break through to a higher realm. Who would have thought? The Emperor's spirit fruit actually disappeared into thin air. This was intolerable. The giant demonic beast was enraged, and it kept roaring. The giant demonic beast was in the outer region of the quasi-emperor forest. With such a ruckus, the surrounding demonic beasts all avoided it, not daring to come close. As for the culprits, Ning Yu and Ning Lu, they were both moving at full speed. 1 minute of invisibility talisman, they couldn't waste it. Originally, Ning Yu didn't dare to move at full speed, but now he had no other choice. Only by moving at full speed could he make better use of the invisibility talisman. There were many benefits in the quasi-emperor forest. Ningyu and Ning Lu moved forward at full speed. In 1 minute, they had run hundreds of miles. Within a few hundred miles, Ningyu found 10 fruits that were comparable to great emperor's spiritual fruits, while Ning Lu stole the treasure of a quasi-emperor demonic beast along the way, infuriating the quasi-emperor demonic beast. It was not until the last second of the invisibility charm was over that Ningyu and Ning Lu gave up searching. They dug a hole and hid in it. Ningyu planned to break through to the peak of the Tao Advent realm with 10 fruits that were comparable to the Emperor's spirit fruit and 1 Emperor's spirit fruit. Kacha! First, he laid down an aura isolation array. Then, Ningyu swallowed a fruit and began to cultivate. Ning Lu, who was at the side, was not idle. He had snatched a demonic beast's treasure, so naturally there were many good things in there. Ningyu was cultivating, and so was Ning Lu. While the two of them were cultivating, the entire quasi-emperor forest was in chaos. Those demonic beasts that were guarding the spirit fruits were enraged, and some even started killing each other. The culprits, Ningyu and Ning Lu, hid in the hole and enjoyed the fruits happily. Bang! Roughly half an hour later, Ningyu slowly spat out a mouthful of foul air. In half an hour, Ningyu refined 6 fruits, and his cultivation advanced from the early stage Tao Advent realm to the peak of the Tao Advent realm. I might as well go all the way and directly raise my cultivation to the heaven arrival realm. Ning Yu looked at the remaining 5 fruits, then gritted his teeth and tossed all of them into his mouth to chew. Kacha! When the fruit entered his stomach, Ning Yu hurriedly sat down cross-legged. Under the guidance of the spell, endless energy flowed along Ning Yu's body. Another half an hour passed. Boom! When a terrifying aura emitted from Ning Yu's body, it meant that Ning Yu's cultivation had already broken through the limit, advancing from the peak of the Tao Advent realm to the heaven arrival realm. After advancing to the heaven arrival realm, Ning Yu used the endoscopy technique to look at the density of the energy in his body and nodded in satisfaction. From the Tao Advent realm to the heaven arrival realm, Ning Yu not only increased his cultivation by a level, but his strength also increased by many times. Originally, when he encountered a quasi-emperor expert or even a peak of the heaven arrival realm expert, he could only flee. Now, even if he encountered a quasi-emperor expert, he could slightly contend against him. Although he couldn't kill a quasi-emperor expert, it was not easy for a quasi-emperor expert to kill him. As for the experts at the peak of the heaven arrival realm, he didn't need to use the great Tao of devouring to easily kill them. On this side, Ning Yu had just advanced to the heaven arrival realm. Next to him, an aura that was not weaker than Ning Yu's was emitted from Ning Lu's body. Heaven arrival realm. Ning Yu rolled his eyes. He had so many fortuitous encounters and swallowed so many fruits to advance to the heaven arrival realm. Ning Lu, on the other hand, easily advanced to the heaven arrival realm and seemed to be slightly stronger than him. Do you want to go back? After advancing to the heaven arrival realm, the first sentence Ning Lu said made Ning Yu shocked. On the way here, I discovered a cave of a mid-stage, first-rank quasi-emperor. Do we want to go back and snatch it? Ning Yu hurriedly shook his head and said, Don't do stupid things. The number of invisibility talismans is limited. It's better to save it to snatch the great emperor's spiritual liquid. It was completely not worth using up an invisibility talisman for the cave of a first-rank quasi-emperor. Ning Yu still wanted to use the remaining 2 invisibility talismans to snatch the great emperor's spiritual liquid. What a pity! Ning Lu felt it was a pity. A mid-stage, first-rank quasi-emperor definitely had a lot of good things. Be careful, we've already entered the central zone of the quasi-emperor forest. I reckon that we'll reach the quasi-emperor palace in a while. Ning Yu collected his thoughts and continued forward. Lin Lang said that they would reach the Quasi-Emperor Palace in a few hours. However, because Ning Yu and Ning Lu advanced at full speed for a minute, judging by the distance, they would probably need to advance slowly for another hour or so before they could see the Quasi-Emperor Palace. The facts proved Ning Yu's guess was not wrong. After an hour passed, a magnificent palace indeed appeared in their line of sight. That is, however, Ning Yu's attention was not attracted by the palace, but by the two martial artists in front of the palace. Those two martial artists were none other than Ao Xing and the third young master. The current Ao Xing was extremely miserable. Without Ning Yu holding him back, he would definitely be at a disadvantage when fighting with the third young master. Furthermore, the third young master had some fortuitous encounter, and his cultivation had already advanced to the peak of heaven receiving realm. The third young master's strength was terrifying to the extreme, and had the capital to contend with quasi-emperor experts. Ao Xing did not have a true body, and would naturally be at a disadvantage when fighting with him. Hence, Ao Xing was captured by the third young master, looking miserable. Humph! In front of the main entrance of the Quasi-Emperor Palace, the third young master snorted coldly and said, "I'll give you one last chance. Tell me how to open the Quasi-Emperor Palace in advance. Otherwise, I'll skin you alive, pull out your tendons, and make you beg for death. Don't even think about it." Chapter 2506. Haha, looks like you won't cry until you see the coffin. The third young master smiled and took out a silver-white elixir with a flick of his wrist. Waving the elixir in front of Ao Xing, the third young master said, "This elixir is called the Demon Blood Elixir. It's used to corrode a martial artist's internal organs. If you swallow it, you'll wish you were dead." Humph! Do you think I'm afraid of you? Ao Xing snorted coldly. At this moment, Ao Xing was fearless. Only he knew how to break the Quasi-Emperor Palace in advance. If the third young master wanted to enter in advance, he would not kill him. So what if he suffered a little? As long as he persisted until Ning Yu arrived, he could turn defeat into victory. Towards Ning Yu, Ao Xing trusted him very much. After all, Ao Xing knew that Ning Yu, that freak, had a terrifying cultivation speed. Although the third young master's cultivation was at the peak of heaven arrival realm, Ao Xing knew that Ning Yu's cultivation had definitely reached the Tao Advent realm, or even the peak of the Tao Advent realm. And with Ning Yu's ability, once he advanced to the peak of Tao Advent realm, his strength would most likely be able to contend with the third young master who was at the peak of heaven arrival realm. Swallow it. The third young master was furious. He tried to persuade Ao Xing, but Ao Xing did not appreciate it. In a rage, he suddenly exerted strength in his wrist and threw the demon blood elixir at Ao Xing's swoosh. However, at this moment, a cold light flashed. Not good. The third young master's expression changed slightly, and he hurriedly retreated. He did not even care about the demon blood elixir in his hand. Pah! The third young master had just retreated a few steps when Ning Yu and Ning Lu sped over from afar and landed in front of him. Ning Yu stretched out his right hand and caught the demon blood elixir firmly. After checking the demon blood elixir, Ning Yu looked at the third young master with interest and said, "The Heavenly Fiend clan is indeed powerful. They have all kinds of elixirs." Ning Yu, the third young master's expression was extremely cold when he saw Ning Yu. He was practically gnashing his teeth as he said, "Heaven arrival realm." The third young master was extremely shocked. He remembered very clearly that when he was separated from Ning Yu's cultivation was only at the initial stage of the Tao Advent realm. How long had it been? Ning Yu advanced to receiving heaven realm. According to this situation, it probably wouldn't be long before Ning Yu's cultivation would be able to rival him and attain the peak of the heaven-taking stage. The more he thought about it, the more panicked the third young master became. Ning Yu was the toughest opponent he had ever met since he entered the immortal court. He took a deep breath. Third young master forced himself to calm down. Not panicking was a rule set by his father, the Blood Sky Battle Emperor. After calming down, the third young master's gaze fell on the young martial artist beside Ningyu. I can't believe it. He took a look. The third young master, who had just calmed down, cursed again. Another heaven-receiving realm expert? Just now, the third young master's attention was all on Ningyu and didn't notice Ning Lu. Now that he saw Ning Lu was also a heaven-receiving realm expert, the third young master couldn't stay calm anymore. However, the third young master was indeed the son of the Blood Sky Battle Emperor. He quickly regained his composure. The third young master raised the corner of his mouth, looked at Ningyu, and said, I have to say, after 3 days, you really made me look at you in a different light. Really? Ningyu smiled and said, You also made me look at you in a different light. Peak of the heaven-receiving realm. A little stronger than I expected. Just a little stronger? The third young master said. Of course, just a little stronger, because the current you is no longer a threat to me. Ningyu nodded, then ignored the third young master's anger and went straight to Ao Xing Pa. He stretched out his right hand and slapped Ao Xing's back. Puchi! With Ningyu's slap, Ao Xing only felt his internal organs churning rapidly. About 3 seconds later, Ao Xing felt a fishy taste in his throat, and he immediately spat out a mouthful of black blood. After spitting out the black blood, Ao Xing felt a little better. It's no use. I left a seal in Ao Xing's body. You can't break the seal, so you can't save Ao Xing. It seemed that everything was under the third young master's control. He crossed his arms and said, Since we met again, then it's fate. Help me break the Quasi-Emperor Palace, and I can guarantee that I won't kill you. Kill us? Do you have that ability? Before Ning you could speak, Ning Lu said coldly. Whoosh! As soon as he spoke, Ning Lu's feet stepped on the ground and he dashed out. Ning Lu's speed was very fast, so fast that it was terrifying. In an instant, Ning Lu arrived in front of the third young master, clenched his right hand into a fist, and smashed toward the third young master's head. This punch was powerful and contained some power of the great Tao. After advancing to the heaven-receiving realm, Ning Lu's body had many great Tao. Compared to Ningyu, Ning Lu didn't need to condense the great Tao. Because he was a world tree, every time he advanced, there would be some great Tao in his body, and he didn't need to condense it himself. Moreover, when he swallowed the conscious world tree, he plundered a few great Tao. Although the great Tao in his body wasn't as good as Ningyu's devouring great Tao, it was still very powerful. Bang! At the critical moment, the third young master clenched his right hand into a fist, and it collided with Ning Lu's fist. The two collided. A muffled sound rang out. Then Ning Lu and the third young master flew out at the same time. Judging from the distance, they flew back. The two of them were evenly matched. Neither of them could do anything to the other. But as the person involved, the third young master knew that he was at a slight disadvantage in this move. But the third young master didn't take it seriously, because he still had a trump card that he hadn't used. The move just now was purely to compete with Ning Lu in terms of energy. Sometimes, having more energy did not mean that one was more powerful. I admit that I have indeed underestimated you. The third young master withdrew his contempt and said, But I still say that even if you don't help me break the Quasi-Emperor Palace, you will go in yourself. Because the great Emperor's spiritual liquid is in the Quasi-Emperor Palace. According to my estimation, in another hour, those Quasi-Emperor experts trapped at the entrance of the core region will come to the core region. With their ability, it won't be difficult to activate the teleportation formation. At that time, many Quasi-Emperor experts will come. Do you think you can still get the great Emperor's spiritual liquid? The third young master's words made Ningyu frown slightly. He was right. Without the quasi-emperor experts, he, Ninglu, and Ao Xing could completely suppress the third young master. But if the quasi-emperor experts came, then his advantage would be gone. Without an advantage, how could he snatch the great emperor's spiritual liquid? Ninglu, if we work together, how confident are we of killing the third young master? Ning-Yu started to transmit his voice to Ninglu, discussing whether to attack the third young master. Hearing this, Chapter 2507. Looks like I can't start a conflict with the third young master in advance. Ningyu frowned slightly at Ninglu's answer. It would take 3 hours to kill the third young master. 3 hours was obviously unrealistic. One had to know. In at most an hour, the quasi-emperors outside the core area would break through the entrance of the core area and activate the teleportation formation to reach the 9th floor of the core area. By then, if they were still fighting with the third young master, the consequences would be unimaginable. Ningyu was not a fool. He knew what to do. But if he let the third young master go just like that, Ningyu would be unwilling. He looked at the third young master and said, "We can work together, but I need 100 Dao comprehension stones and 1,000 Dao fruits. Why don't you just rob them?" The third young master said angrily. Ningyu dared to say that. 100 Dao comprehension stones and 1,000 Dao fruits. Where could he find so many things? Although he had gained a lot of benefits and encountered many opportunities recently, it was still a pity. However, all the benefits that he obtained were used to raise his cultivation. Otherwise, how could he reach the peak of the heaven-receiving state so quickly? Now, he did have some Dao fruits and Dao comprehension stones. After all, he did not devour the Dao and could not devour the Dao comprehension stones quickly. But the quantity was far less than what Ningyu said. He really couldn't take out so much at once. Even if he could, he would not give them to Ningyu. After all, the enemy was strong and he was weak. He knew this very well. Then drag it out. Who's afraid of who? Ningyu shrugged, indicating that he did not care. He wanted to enter the quasi-emperor palace, and so did the third young master. Now, it was time to see who was more impatient. Damn it! The third young master was so angry that his nose became crooked as he cursed. He took a deep breath. The third young master said coldly, "I can give you 10 Dao comprehension stones and 100 Dao fruits." Seeing that Ningyu was about to refuse, the third young master continued, "Don't be in a hurry to refuse. This is my limit. If you don't agree, then we can only drag it out like this and wait for those quasi-emperors to come and get a share. Deal." Ningyu smiled and said, 10 Dao comprehension stones and 100 Dao fruits were a good harvest. It was better than nothing. Whoosh! With a flick of his wrist, the third young master tossed a spatial ring to Ningyu. Chi-chi! The speed of the spatial ring was very fast. As it rubbed against the void, it let out a sizzling sound. Obviously, the third young master had tampered with the interspatial ring in an attempt to plot against Ningyu. Little did they know, Ningyu had expected him to do this. Gathering the energy in his body on his palm, Ningyu quietly dispelled the energy that the third young master had left on the spatial ring. After dispelling the force, Ningyu threw the space ring into the red demon sword and said to the third young master, "Thanks." Subsequently, Ningyu ignored the third young master. Instead, he activated the devouring Great Dao and began to devour the Great Dao fruit and Dao comprehension stone within the red demon sword. The Great Dao of Devouring was already ranked 800th on the 3,000 Great Dao rankings, and the speed at which he devoured enlightenment stones had increased by a lot. In just a few seconds, the Dao comprehension stone and Dao fruit were all devoured. After devouring 100 Tao fruits and 10 enlightenment stones, the ranking of the great Tao of devouring rose from 800 to 750th. It would be very difficult for him to advance further after entering the 800. Moreover, the enlightenment stones and fruits that the third young master had given him were not of high quality. It was already very good for the great Tao of devouring to rise to 750th. The ranking of the great Tao of devouring had risen to 750th. Ning Yu's strength had increased again. Originally, when he encountered weak quasi-emperors, he could put up a fight and not be easily killed. But now, if he encountered weak quasi-emperors again, he would have the chance to kill them if he used the great Tao of devouring. Of course, the prerequisite was that the weakest quasi-emperor was not one that had been in the quasi-emperor realm for a long time. Can we open the quasi-emperor palace now? The third young master naturally did not know that Ning Yu's strength had increased again. He said coldly, "It will be disadvantageous for both of us if we delay any longer. Let's begin." Ning Yu nodded at Ao Xing and said, "Actually, after the ranking of the great Tao of devouring had increased, Ning Yu had many thoughts. According to his initial estimation, if he worked together with Ning Lu, the time needed to kill the third young master should be reduced from 3 hours to 1 hour. 1 hour was not long, but it was not short either. Ning Yu temporarily suppressed his thoughts. Anyway, there was still time. He would think about it after entering the quasi-emperor palace. All of you step back. Just as Ning Yu was thinking, Ao Xing took a step forward and suddenly transformed into his true dragon form. After transforming into his true dragon form, Ao Xing opened his mouth and spat out his inner core. Boom! The inner core shot out and continuously hit the stone door of the quasi-emperor palace. Seeing this, the third young master's face turned green. If he had known this would happen, he would have killed Ao Xing first and then used Ao Xing's inner core to attack the stone door. However, there was no medicine for regret. The third young master could only wait quietly and hope that Ao Xing could break the quasi-emperor palace as soon as possible. Rumble. As Ao Xing continuously hit the stone door, cracks gradually appeared on it. Crack, crack, crack. The cracks grew larger and larger. Crack. Another 10 minutes passed. When a crisp sound rang out, the stone door of the quasi-emperor palace suddenly cracked open. Retreat. As soon as the stone door opened, the third young master rose from the ground and rushed into the quasi-emperor palace at a terrifying speed. Let's go too. Ning Yu did not delay. He brought Ao Xing and Ning Lu into the quasi-emperor palace. Bang! As soon as Ning Yu and the others stepped into the quasi-emperor palace, the cracked stone door suddenly closed up and returned to its original state. Turning back to look at the stone door, Ning Yu said in a low voice, "Ao Xing, how do we get out later?" There is a core control room in the depths of the quasi-emperor palace, which controls the various secret formations of the quasi-emperor palace. We must find that control room and then change the structure of the formation so that we can successfully leave the quasi-emperor palace. Ao Xing thought about it and said, "Now is not the time to go to the control room. Although the quasi-emperor palace is dangerous, there are more opportunities. As long as your luck is not too bad, by the time you leave, you can at least advance to the peak of the heaven receiving realm." So powerful? Ning Yu said in astonishment. The further one advanced to the heaven receiving realm, the more difficult it was to advance. Especially Ning Yu. The difficulty of him advancing to the peak of the heaven receiving realm is probably much greater than the third young master. The third young master was able to smoothly advance from the early stage of the heaven receiving realm to the peak of the heaven receiving realm. On one hand, he had obtained benefits. On the other hand, he had more power of faith and even the blood essence of a great emperor. After all, the strength of the third young master's father, the Blood Sky Battle Emperor, was a mystery. Some said he was a quasi-emperor. Some said he was a great emperor. I need you to do me a favor. Chapter 2508. We're a family, don't be so polite. Ning Yu waved his hand, indicating that Ao Xing did not have to say that. Even if Ao Xing did not say it, Ning Yu would have helped. After all, Ao Xing knew how to break the Quasi-Emperor Palace in advance, so he definitely knew some other secrets. Ning Yu was not like the third young master, who had Blood Sky Battle Emperor as his father and could understand the danger in the Quasi-Emperor Palace in advance. If he did not follow Ao Xing, who should he follow? Anyway, he and Ao Xing had fought side by side, so the chances of Ao Xing gaining benefits and turning back to attack him were very low. Let's go! Ao Xing gave Ning Yu a serious look, then stomped on the ground and rushed out. Swish! Swish! Ning Yu and Ning Lu's figures flashed, following closely behind Ao Xing. Along the way, Ao Xing and Ning Yu explained the structure of the Quasi-Emperor Palace. After listening, Ning Yu had a general understanding of the Quasi-Emperor Palace. The Quasi-Emperor Palace was divided into the outer palace and the inner palace. The good things were naturally in the inner palace. However, there were also many good things in the outer palace. At least for martial artists whose cultivation was below the Quasi-Emperor realm, the benefits they could obtain in the outer palace were more than in the inner palace. There was a saying that went well: the greater the opportunity, the greater the danger. There were indeed many good things in the inner palace, but if one's cultivation was below the Quasi-Emperor realm, the chances of obtaining benefits in the inner palace were almost zero. Crack! After advancing at full speed for about 10 minutes, Ao Xing stopped in front of a small palace. After casually killing a heaven-receiving realm demonic beast guarding the palace, Ao Xing said in a deep voice, "There are 10 Tao comprehension stones and 1,000 Tao fruits in this palace." After entering the Quasi-Emperor Palace, Ao Xing's strength had increased a lot. It was unknown if there was a certain connection with the physical body, but his Tao Advent realm cultivation gave Ning Yu a great pressure. Ning Yu did not think about these things. He leaped into the palace and began to search for treasures. 5 seconds. Ning Yu only used 5 seconds to search for all the good things in the palace. Without a doubt, Ning Yu gave all 10 enlightenment stones and 1,000 Tao fruits to the great Tao of devouring. The great Tao of devouring didn't let Ning Yu down. 10 Tao comprehension stones and 1,000 Tao fruits. The ranking of the devouring great Tao directly jumped to 700th place on the 3,000 great Tao rankings. Boom! Ning Yu's ranking in the 700th place also rose along with it. A terrifying aura emanated from Ning Yu's body. Middle stage heaven receiving state. Ning Yu had benefited a lot from the continuous advancement of the devouring great Tao's ranking. Continue forward. Next. Ao Xing continued to lead Ning Yu and the others into the outer palace. The outer palace was very big, and there were many palaces like this that had Tao fruits. Apart from Ao Xing, Ning Lu and Ning Yu also attacked from time to time. In just 1 hour, Ning Yu and the others had obtained a total of 1,000 enlightenment stones and 10,000 Tao fruits. Ning Yu devoured some of the Tao fruits and Tao comprehension stones, while Ning Lu devoured the rest. Even the people in the Red Demon Sword received some as well. The Dark Emperor, Lin Lang, and the others were all doing their best to refine the great Tao fruit and Tao comprehension stone. As for Ning Yu, after devouring so many Tao comprehension stones and Tao fruits, the Devour Great Tao's ranking had already soared to 550. Ning Yu's own cultivation had smoothly advanced to the late stage of heaven receiving stage, and was only a step away from advancing to the peak of heaven receiving stage. Ning Lu was even more exaggerated. He refined the fruit of Tao and the devouring grand Tao, and his cultivation directly soared to the peak of the heaven receiving realm. Even Ao Xing, who hadn't refined the Tao fruit, had his cultivation increase rapidly, and he'd arrived at the peak of the heaven, taking realm from the Tao Advent realm. Comparing people to dragons and trees is infuriating. Ningyu glanced at Ao Xing and Ninglu, murmuring. He had the devouring great Tao, a freakish thing, but his cultivation speed was not as fast as Ao Xing and Ninglu's. It seemed that the true dragon and the world tree were not just for show. If Ao Xing and Ninglu knew Ningyu's true thoughts, they would probably spit out a mouthful of blood. One was a true dragon, and the other was a world tree. Unexpectedly, their cultivation speed was only slightly faster than Ningyu's. Let's go. The good things in the outer palace are almost all plundered. Let's go to the inner palace. Ao Xing's gaze stared into the distance, and he said in a low voice, "There are a total of 2 paths from the outer palace to the inner palace. One is to take the spatial transportation array. Of course, I don't recommend taking this path, because there's a rank 2 quasi-emperor guarding the spatial transportation array. As for the other path, it's through the 3 Corpse River." 3 Corpse River? Ningyu asked in puzzlement. Ao Xing nodded and explained. The so-called 3 Corpse River is because anyone who wants to cross over must directly face 3 corpses. The corpse of the past, the corpse of the present, and the corpse of the future. Only by defeating these 3 corpses can one truly cross over. How strong are the 3 corpses? Ningyu asked. Very strong, Ao Xing said. Regardless of which corpse, they all have the cultivation of an early stage, rank 1, quasi-emperor. Is that so? Ningyu fell into deep thought. 3 corpses comparable to an early stage, rank 1, quasi-emperor. Given his strength, it would be very difficult to cross over. However, compared to going through the transportation array and facing a rank 2 quasi-emperor, Ningyu preferred to face an early stage, rank 1, quasi-emperor corpse. Looks like you already have a judgment. Ao Xing leaped up and flew directly toward the 3 Corpse River. Behind him, Ningyu and Ning Lu followed closely behind. With Ao Xing leading the way, Ningyu and the rest only took half an hour to arrive at the 3 Corpse River. Shocking! These 2 words appeared in Ning Yu's mind the moment he saw the 3 Corpse River. The water of the 3 Corpse River was not clear. On the contrary, it was extremely turbid and black. There are fish in it. Suddenly, Ning Yu's eyes narrowed. This was because he discovered that there were a few large fish as thick as a waist in the 3 Corpse River. These fish had 3 different colors, black, white, and gold. That's the 3 Corpse fish. Ao Xing said. The 3 Corpse fish is a specialty of the 3 Corpse River. It tastes delicious, and eating it can strengthen one's body. Are you sure this 3 Corpse fish is edible? Ningyu was slightly stunned. The 3 Corpse River was so turbid, but the 3 Corpse fish that lived in it could actually be eaten. The world was really big, and there were all kinds of strange things. However, even if the 3 Corpse fish was edible, Ningyu would not eat it. There was no other reason than it was disgusting. Of course, Ao Xing flicked his finger, and a cold light shot out, bombarding a 3 Corpse fish. Immediately after, the cold light picked up the 3 Corpse fish and threw it to the shore. Crack! Ao Xing did not waste any time. He directly grabbed the 3 Corpse fish and threw it into his mouth to chew. Not long later, a huge 3 Corpse fish was completely devoured by Ao Xing. It seemed that Ao Xing was still not satisfied. What a monster! Ningyu had a headache. As expected of a true dragon, it ate everything. Swoosh! As Ningyu was thinking, Ao Xing grabbed another 3 Corpse fish and threw it at him. Devouring Tao. With a thought, Ningyu used the Devouring Tao. He did not eat the 3 Corpse fish, but it did not mean that the Devouring Tao would not. Chapter 2509. The facts proved. Ning Yu's guess was right. The great Tao of Devour could indeed devour 3 corpse fish. Moreover, the great Tao of Devour had only devoured 1 3-corpse fish, and its ranking rose from 550 to 549. 1 3-corpse fish could raise one's ranking, which surprised Ning Yu. Swish! Next, Ning Yu and Ao Xing moved together and started to catch 3-corpse fish. The difficulty of catching the 3-corpse fish wasn't too high. In just 10 minutes, Ning Yu and Ao Xing had caught a few hundred of them, other than some being given to Ning Lu and the Dark Emperor. The rest were all devoured by the great Tao of Devour. After devouring these 3-corpse fish, the ranking of the great Tao of Devour rose to 499. Rumble! The ranking of the great Tao of Devour had broken through to more than 400. Ning Yu received the most direct benefit. His cultivation had advanced from the late stage of heaven receiving state to the peak of heaven receiving state. In a short period of time, Ning Yu had soared from the early stage of heaven receiving state to the peak of heaven receiving state. This kind of cultivation increase speed somewhat made Ning Lu and Ao Xing perspire with shame. I will go cross the 3-corpse river first. Ao Xing leaped up and rushed into the 3-corpse river. Splash! Ao Xing rushed into the 3-corpse river. A black corpse came out from the bottom of the river and fought with Ao Xing on the spot. Past corpse! Ning Yu's eyes narrowed. He could clearly see that this black corpse was formed from the black river water. In other words, the real problem might be the water of the 3-corpse river. However, even if he knew that there was a problem with the river water, Ning Yu could do nothing about it. The river water condensed the past corpse and fought with Ao Xing. He couldn't help even if he wanted to, because if he rushed into the 3-corpse river, his past corpse would appear. Kill! Ao Xing became more and more courageous as he fought. Ao Xing, who was at the peak of heaven receiving state, was extremely powerful. The black past corpse fought with him for only a minute before being defeated. Splash! The black past corpse was defeated and the white present corpse came out. Similarly, the white present corpse only lasted for a minute before being defeated by Ao Xing's splash. Next, the golden future corpse appeared. The golden future zombie had grown much stronger. It lasted 3 minutes in Ao Xing's hands before it was defeated. After Ao Xing defeated the 3 corpses, a golden lotus platform appeared from the bottom of the river. The refining platform wrapped around Ao Xing and sent him to the other side of the 3-corpse river. Allow me. Seeing Ao Xing cross the 3-corpse river, Ning Lu leaped up and jumped into the 3-corpse river. Ning Lu's strength, compared to Ao Xing, could only be stronger, not weaker. Ao Xing used 5 minutes to defeat the 3 corpses, while Ning Lu used 4 minutes to defeat the 3 corpses. Although the 3 corpses were early stage, rank 1 quasi-emperors, they naturally could not pose a problem for Ao Xing and Ning Lu. Whoosh! Subsequently, Ning Yu's figure flashed and entered the 3-corpse river. Whoosh! 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 However, as soon as Ning Yu entered the 3 corpses river, 3 corpses emerged from the bottom of the river. I can't believe it! Seeing the 3 corpses that suddenly appeared, Ning Yu directly cursed. When Ning Lu and Ao Xing entered the 3-corpse river, only 1 corpse appeared. Why did 3 corpses appear together when it was his turn? In a one-on-one fight, he had advanced to the peak of heaven receiving realm, and his great Tao of Devouring had also soared to rank 499. If he encountered an early stage rank 1 quasi-emperor, he could easily fight and defeat them. However, now 3 corpses appeared together, and the cultivation of each corpse was not early stage rank 1 quasi-emperor, but peak early stage rank 1 quasi-emperor. Quasi-emperors of this level were extremely powerful. in a one-on-one fight, Ningyu did not have the slightest confidence that he could defeat the three of them together. What exactly is going on? On the other side of the river, Ning Lu's expression changed as he asked hurriedly, I don't know what happened. It doesn't make sense. There is no reason for three corpses to appear in the three-corpse river at once. Ao Xing was also somewhat at a loss. Ning Lu did not know, but how would he know? One had to know. Ever since the three-corpse river appeared, there had never been such a situation. Could it be Ningyu was so powerful that he attracted the attention of the three-corpse river? I know what's going on. At this moment, a faint laughter rang in Ning Lu and Ao Xing's ears. Hearing this, Ning Lu and Ao Xing's expression changed as they turned to look. Seeing the familiar figure that slowly appeared, their expressions turned extremely ugly. This cultivator was none other than the third young master. Moreover, there was a middle-aged man behind the third young master. The middle-aged man's eyes were dull and lifeless, looking like he did not have any consciousness. However, Ao Xing and Ning Lu knew that the middle-aged man was very powerful. At the very least, he was much more powerful than an ordinary peak early stage, rank 1 quasi-emperor. Perhaps even a mid-stage rank 1 quasi-emperor might not be able to defeat him. I'll tell you the truth. The third young master smiled faintly and said, The three corpses appeared at the same time because of me. I want to see if Ning you can defeat the three corpses at the same time. You're courting death. Ning Lu was enraged. He leaped up, clenched his right fist, and punched at the third young master. Bang! The third young master did not make a move. The middle-aged man behind him took a step forward, and his right fist collided with Ning Lu's fist. The two fists collided. Ning Lu took 5 steps back, and the middle-aged man took 3 steps back. In this exchange, it was clear who was stronger and who was weaker. Not bad at all. I didn't expect your strength to improve so quickly. The third young master's eyes revealed a hint of shock. He used the backup left behind by Blood Sky Battle Emperor to find the middle-aged man's puppet in the outer palace of the Quasi-Emperor Palace. The middle-aged man's combat strength was comparable to a peak early stage rank 1 Quasi-Emperor. Originally, the third young master thought that he could easily defeat Ning Lu and Ao Xing by finding the middle-aged man. Now, it seemed that he thought too much. However, the third young master did not panic. After all, his strength was much stronger than the middle-aged man. If he and the middle-aged man worked together, they might be able to kill Ning Lu and Ao Xing. However, he did not want to make a move for the time being. He wanted to see the scene of Ning Yu being killed by the three corpses with his own eyes. Rumble. In the air above the three-corpse river, Ning Yu was already fighting with the three corpses. 1 against 3. Ning Yu was under great pressure. Pucci. In just one move, he was sent flying by the 3-peak early stage, rank 1, quasi-emperor corpses. No, I have to use the devouring Great Tao. Ning Yu had no intention of holding back. He immediately activated the Great Tao of Devouring. The devouring Great Tao was indeed powerful. Without the devouring Great Tao, Ning Yu could not even block one move. Using the devouring Great Tao, Ning Yu could already fight against the three corpses, but it was only a matter of time before he was defeated. The devouring Great Tao can devour the Tao fruit, Tao comprehension stone, and 3 corpse fish. I should be able to devour the 3 corpses, right? Ning Yu forced the 3 corpses back with one move, revealing a ferocious look in his eyes. If the battle continued normally, he would definitely be defeated with no chance of winning. However, once the devouring Great Tao devoured the 3 corpses, he could easily cross the 3-corpse river. Chapter 2510. Ning Yu was not an indecisive person. He immediately executed the devouring great Tao and flew towards the three corpses. Nonsense. On the other side of the three-corpse river, Ao Xing saw Ning Yu's actions and yelled, "The corpses of the past, present, and future are all extremely terrifying existences. Use the devouring great Tao to devour them. Be careful of." However, Ao Xing's voice had just reached halfway when he abruptly stopped. There was no other reason. Ao Xing thought of Ning Yu's current situation and knew that it was not optimistic. Although Ning Yu had advanced to the peak of heaven receiving state, it was more difficult than ascending to heaven to defeat the three corpses at the same time with his current strength. The only thing he could do now, he could only use the devouring great Tao to try. Therefore, Ao Xing initially wanted to dissuade Ning Yu from being foolish, but when he thought of Ning Yu's situation, he chose to shut up. He actually wants to devour three corpses. As expected, newborn calves are not afraid of tigers. The ignorant are fearless. The third young master saw Ning Yu's actions and said with a smile, "I will say this, if Ning Yu can successfully devour the three corpses, I will chop off my head and give it to him as a urinal." The third young master was very confident. Before heading to the quasi-emperor mystic realm, he had heard the Blood Sky Battle Emperor say he could use secret techniques to defeat the corpses in the three-corpse river, but he must not think of devouring them. That was because these corpses had been contaminated with karma. Devouring them might cause some unexpected things to happen. Crack! Above the three-corpse river, Ning Yu did not care what Ao Xing and the third young master were thinking. To him, the most important thing was to unleash the power of the devouring great Tao to the extreme and devour the three corpses as much as possible. If he did not devour, he would die. If he devoured, there was still a chance of survival. Even a fool would try his best to devour the three corpses. Pucci, however, the devouring great Tao was sent flying when it approached the future corpse. As for Ning Yu, he immediately vomited a mouthful of blood due to the backlash. Again, Ning Yu would not give up. The great Tao of devouring was his only trump card. He had to use it even if he couldn't. Puff, puff, puff. However, the future zombie seemed to be very difficult to deal with. No matter how hard Ning Yu tried to control the great Tao of devour, he was unable to harm the future zombie. On the contrary, he spat out a mouthful of blood due to the backlash, and his aura was a little weak. Could it be that the method is wrong? Ning Yu immediately retracted his devouring great Tao, allowing it to float above his head. At the same time, he was on guard against the three corpses to prevent them from suddenly attacking. Suddenly, Ning Yu's heart skipped a beat as he seemed to realize his mistake. The three corpses were the past corpse, present corpse, and future corpse. By right, the past zombie was the weakest, the present zombie was second, and the future zombie was the strongest. The devouring great Tao couldn't devour the future zombie, but that didn't mean it couldn't devour the past zombie. First devour the weak, then devour the strong. Before he could recover to his peak state, Ning Yu immediately controlled the devouring great Tao and charged towards the corpse of the past. This time, Ning Yu was determined to succeed or die trying. He injected all the energy in his body into the devouring great Tao to help it deal with the corpse of the past. Chi, chi, chi. The moment the devouring great Tao got close to the corpse of the past, a terrifying devouring power surged out and crushed the corpse of the past. Following that, a series of sizzling sounds could be heard. The corpse of the past was devoured by the devouring great Tao. Gulp! On the other side of the three-corpse river, Ao Xing and the third young master swallowed their saliva when they saw that their faces were filled with shock. That worked too. Since ancient times, Ning Yu was probably the only one who could devour corpses directly, right? It was truly unprecedented, and there would be no one who could do it in the future. Not long later, The corpse of the past was devoured by the devouring Great Tao. Immediately after, Ning Yu controlled the devouring Great Tao to devour the corpse of the present. After devouring the corpse of the past, the ranking of the devouring Great Tao rose from 499 to 449. It had risen by a full 50 ranks. The rise in the ranking did not just mean a number. It also meant that the power of the devouring Great Tao had increased significantly. With the increase in power, the devouring Great Tao could naturally deal with the corpse of the present with ease. The devouring Great Tao took 3 minutes to devour the corpse of the past. The corpse of the present only took 2 minutes to devour. Great! Ning Yu was delighted. He controlled the devouring Great Tao to devour the corpse of the future. The corpse of the future was much stronger than the corpse of the past and corpse of the present. To put it simply, the corpse of the past and corpse of the present working together was definitely not a match for the corpse of the future. The devouring Great Tao devoured the corpse of the past and rose to 449. After devouring the corpse of the present, it rose to 400. Rumble! The devouring Great Tao instantly erupted with a terrifying devouring power and began to fight with the corpse of the future. No, I have to increase the difficulty. On the other side of the Three-Corpse River, the third young master's expression was extremely cold. Ning Yu's successful devouring of the corpse of the past and corpse of the present had greatly exceeded his expectations. Based on the situation, as long as Ning Yu devoured the corpse of the future, Ning Yu's strength would rise to a terrifying level. At that time, even if he had the middle-aged man, he might not be able to suppress Ning Yu. Go! With a flick of his wrist, the third young master took out a crystal ball. The crystal ball drew a mark in the air and landed steadily in the Three-Corpse River. Rumble! The moment the crystal ball landed in the Three-Corpse River, it exploded. It was obvious. The explosion of the crystal ball was the doing of the third young master. Swash! Swash! Right then, something strange happened. 2 afterimages appeared at the spot where the crystal ball exploded. What the F***CK? Ning Yu cursed when he saw the 2 afterimages. He was very close to the speed of the afterimages. Therefore, it only took an instant for him to discover the true appearance of the afterimages, the black corpse of the past and the white corpse of the present. Ning Yu had an urge to curse. Didn't they say that he could cross the Three-Corpse River after defeating 3 corpses? Just as he was about to devour the corpse of the future, another 2 corpses appeared. Ha ha ha! When the third young master saw Ning Yu's embarrassed look, he immediately threw his head back and laughed. After laughing, the third young master said coldly, Ning Yu, I've already said that this day next year will be the anniversary of your death. A trash like you still wants to cross the Three-Corpse River? As long as I'm here, you can forget about coming over in this lifetime. Do it. How could Ning Lu and Ao Xing watch as the third young master did something bad? They exchanged glances and immediately rose from the ground, charging towards the third young master from 2 directions. Ning Lu and Ao Xing's cultivation were both at the peak of heaven receiving realm. Although they might not be the third young master's match in a one-on-one fight, it was not too big of a problem to stop the third young master. Chapter 25:11. Humph! You are seeking death. Seeing Ning Lu and Ao Xing charge at him, third young master snorted coldly and controlled the middle-aged man to charge out. Swish! Last time, the middle-aged man fought Ning Lu and had the upper hand. Therefore, third young master let the middle-aged man fight Ning Lu this time. As for himself, he chose to fight Ao Xing. After all, Ao Xing was a true dragon and was extremely strong. Third young master felt that he could comprehend something from fighting Ao Xing. Rumble! A huge battle erupted. due to Ning Lu and Aoxing restraining him. Third young master could not cause trouble for Ningyu and could only focus on the battle. Chi chi chi. Without third young master's interference, Ningyu controlled the Devour Dao and started a frenzied devouring journey. 10 minutes later, the Devour Dao devoured the golden future corpse. Another 15 minutes passed. The Devour Dao devoured the black past corpse. Another 20 minutes passed. The Devour Dao devoured the white present corpse. Swish! After devouring 5 corpses, Ningyu felt exhausted. He did not have time to check the ranking of the Devour Dao. He leaped up and dashed towards the other side of the 3-corpse river. When Ning Lu and Aoxing defeated the 3 corpses, a lotus platform would appear at the bottom of the 3-corpse river and carry them across. Ningyu had it easy. If he was any slower, there might be a few more corpses at the bottom of the river, much less refining the platform. Although the Devour Dao devoured corpses to increase its power, one had to be alive to do so. The second past corpse was stronger than the first future corpse. The second present corpse was much stronger than the second past corpse. From the looks of it, even the Devour Dao would not be able to resist the power of the second future corpse. A wise man submits to the circumstances. Ning, you did not want to increase the danger. Rushing at full speed, Ningyu quickly reached the other side of the 3-corpse river. Just as Ningyu reached the other side, third young master and the others stopped. The balance was broken. Originally, third young master suppressed Aoxing while the middle-aged man suppressed Ning Lu. Now that Ningyu appeared, the scales of victory tilted towards Aoxing and Ning Lu. The third young master was not a hothead. On the contrary, he was exceptionally shrewd. Rolling his eyes, the third young master said to Ningyu, I didn't expect you to be able to successfully cross the 3-corpse river. This is indeed beyond my expectations. In this case, you are now qualified to enter the inner palace of the Quasi-Emperor Palace with me. Submit to me and become my slave, and I will allow you to do as you please in the inner palace. He lost his mind. Ningyu was a little confused. Even at a time like this, the third young master still dared to speak like this. Could it be that he still had a trump card? Thinking of this, Ningyu extended his perception and quietly approached the third young master. Not good, go. This probing caused Ningyu's expression to change drastically. As expected of the third young master, on the surface he appeared to be arrogant and conceited, but in reality he was secretly activating the talisman, wanting to escape from here. If it weren't for Ningyu's wits, he might have succeeded. However, no matter how fast Ningyu reacted, he could not stop the third young master from activating the talisman. The reason was simple. The talisman that the third young master activated was a middle-grade Quasi-Emperor talisman. Unless one was a middle-grade Quasi-Emperor, there was no way to stop this level of Quasi-Emperor talisman. Ningyu, Aoxing, Ning Lu, we will meet again. Before leaving, the third young master did not forget to leave a ruthless message. Damn it! Watching the third young master leave, Ning Lu and Aoxing cursed at the same time. After Ningyu appeared, the two of them thought that they could join forces to kill the third young master. Unexpectedly, the third young master had a middle-grade Quasi-Emperor talisman on him, and before they could react, he activated it and successfully left. If they could not kill the third young master this time, the next time they wanted to kill him, it would be harder than ascending to heaven. After all, the inner palace of the Quasi-Emperor Palace was much more valuable than the outer palace. If the third young master found some treasures in the inner palace, he might be able to directly soar to the Quasi-Emperor realm. The third young master, who was at the peak of heaven receiving realm, was already terrifying enough. One could imagine, once he advanced to the Quasi-Emperor realm, how powerful would he be? Don't worry. Ningyu waved his hand, indicating that Ning Lu and Aoxing did not need to worry. The reason why he did not notice the third young master activating the Quasi-Emperor talisman was because he was careless and because he was observing the great Tao of devouring. The great Tao of devouring devoured 5 corpses consecutively, and its ranking on the 3,000 Great Tao list had already soared to 350th. Correspondingly, Ningyu's strength had also increased, and there was a qualitative leap. Previously, Ningyu could deal with a peak early first rank quasi-emperor, but now, under the premise of using the great Tao of devouring, even if he encountered a peak mid-first rank quasi-emperor, he would not fear. Furthermore, if he used his full strength, he might be able to contend with a late first rank quasi-emperor. Whoosh! On this side, Ningyu and Aoxing had not left yet. On the other side of the 3-corpse river, there were several quasi-emperors flying through the air. These quasi-emperors were all from the top 10 forces of the 100 Forest domain. These people all had expressions of anger on their faces. It was very simple. They spent a lot of effort to break through the core area of the quasi-emperor's secret realm, and then activated the transmission array of the broken temple to arrive at the 9th floor. Next, they arrived at the quasi-emperor palace again. Originally, they thought that they could find some treasures in the outer palace area of the quasi-emperor palace to make up for their previous losses. Who would have thought that not only did they not find any treasures, but they also encountered some danger? Go! The moment he saw the many quasi-emperors, Ningyu leaped up and fled into the depths of the inner palace. In this kind of situation, it was better not to expose himself. Otherwise, when these quasi-emperors left, they might use their respective forces to find trouble with him. There seems to be someone. Ningyu had just left with Aoxing and the others, when a quasi-emperor frowned slightly and said doubtfully, "Our speed is not slow. Why is there someone faster than us? Could it be the people of the Holy Ming Empire?" Another quasi-emperor's face turned cold, and he said in a low voice, "The Holy Ming Empire has the ambition of wolves. In my opinion, we should join forces to kill these trash of the Holy Ming Empire, lest something unexpected happens. Don't slander us." The mid-first rank quasi-emperor of the Holy Ming Empire had an ugly expression. Along the way, the 9 forces often joined forces to find trouble with them. At first, it was just some small friction, but as time went on, the friction increased. Not long ago, the 9 forces had just joined forces to kill a few quasi-emperors of the Holy Ming Empire and framed the sky demons. This was because in the outer palace area, they had indeed found the aura left by the sky demons. This mid-first rank quasi-emperor of the Holy Ming Empire could only suffer in silence, unable to say anything. He had no doubt, if he dared to fly off the handle, the 9 forces would definitely join forces to kill him. So he had to endure. After all, the 9 forces were not united. As long as he could drag out this period of time and successfully cross the 3-corpse river, he could search for treasures in the inner palace according to a treasure map on him, and strive to break through to the late first rank, or even peak first rank quasi-emperor realm. Chapter 2512. At the same time, quasi-emperor palace in the inner palace area. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Ningyu, Aoxing, and the others were extremely fast as they flew through the inner palace. Aoxing's plan was to plunder the treasures in the inner palace first. After all, there were many palaces in the inner palace, and most of them had Tao fruits and Tao comprehension stones. However, Ningyu's plan was different from Aoxing's. Every second counts. Ningyu's plan was very simple. First, go to the deepest part of the inner palace and think of a way to obtain the great emperor's spiritual liquid. After all, the best thing in the entire quasi-emperor mystic realm was the great emperor's spiritual liquid. Compared to the great emperor's spiritual liquid, everything else paled in comparison. After traveling at full speed for a full 10 minutes, Ningyu and Aoxing stopped in front of a palace. This palace was unusually huge. Just from the outside, it was no different from a quasi-emperor palace. "We're a step late." Ning Yu and Ao Xing did not waste any time, immediately leaping up and rushing towards the palace, because this huge palace had long been broken through. Without a doubt, the martial artist who broke through the palace was definitely the third young master. The third young master used a mid-tier quasi-emperor talisman and left first. Given the third young master's charisma, he would not be attracted by those things in the inner palace. What could really attract him was the great emperor's spiritual liquid. As expected, Ning Yu and Ao Xing had just entered the palace when they saw the third young master. At this time, the third young master was confronting a demonic beast. The demonic beast had 2 horns on its head, a pair of wings on its back, and a curved tail like a sickle. Preliminary observation. The cultivation of the dual-horned and winged demonic beast should be a peak rank 1 quasi-emperor. As for the third young master, he had some fortuitous encounter and actually advanced to early rank 1 quasi-emperor. However, even if the third young master advanced to early rank 1 quasi-emperor, it would be useless against a peak rank 1 quasi-emperor demonic beast. Ning Yu shifted his gaze slightly. Next to the third young master, he saw the middle-aged man who was torn to pieces. The middle-aged man was the third young master's puppet, and his strength was slightly stronger than Ning Lu. Even he was torn to pieces. One could imagine how terrifying the strength of the dual-horned and winged demonic beast was. Gulp! Ning Yu retracted his gaze and looked behind the winged demonic beast. Ning Yu swallowed a mouthful of saliva as soon as he saw it. Behind the twin-horned, twin-winged demonic beast was a small pond. The pond was filled with golden liquid. Great Emperor's spiritual liquid. The golden liquid was their final target, the great monarch's spiritual liquid. Compared to Ning Yu's shock, Ao Xing almost jumped up. He didn't tell Ning Yu that his body was hidden inside the monarch's spiritual liquid, at the bottom of the pond. If it wasn't for the fact that he was afraid of the demonic beast's terrifying strength, Ao Xing would have already rushed towards the pond. Ning Yu, you guys came just in time. The 4 of us will kill this demonic beast and split the monarch's spiritual liquid evenly. When the third young master saw Ning Yu and the rest, his face lit up with joy. He was not a match for the twin-horned, twin-winged demonic beast by himself. Only by teaming up with Ning Yu and Ao Xing would he be able to fight the demonic beast and even kill it. Why should I team up with you? Ning Yu crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked at the third young master with interest. After the demonic beast kills you, I'll reap the benefits. Isn't that better? Don't be naive. Do you think the demonic beast won't kill you after killing me? The third young master said coldly. Don't worry, the twin-horned, twin-winged demonic beast strength isn't enough to kill us. Ning Yu said calmly. 100 enlightenment stones and 10,000 Dao fruits. Seeing Ning Yu's actions, the third young master gritted his teeth and said in a deep voice, as long as you help me deal with the twin-horned, twin-winged demonic beast, I will give you 100 enlightenment stones and 10,000 Dao fruits. That's too little. Ning Yu shook his head. How could he let go of such a great opportunity? Whether he could save the third young master was secondary. At the moment, extorting some benefits from the third young master was the most important thing. Since the third young master offered 100 enlightenment stones and 10,000 Dao fruits, it meant that he had gained a lot from this palace. Damn it! The third young master cursed and gritted his teeth. 1,000 enlightenment stones and 20,000 Dao fruits. That's the limit. If you can't do it, I'll lure the demonic beast over to your side. Deal. Ning Yu smiled and said, as for what the third young master said about luring the demonic beast over, Ning Yu was just smiling and did not take it seriously. Given the third young master's character, if he could really lure the demonic beast over, he would have done it long ago. Swish! With a flick of his wrist, the third young master threw an interspatial ring to Ningyu. Piak! Ningyu caught the interspatial ring firmly. Using his senses, Ningyu discovered that there were 1,000 enlightenment stones and 20,000 Dao fruits in the interspatial ring. There must be a demon behind this. Ningyu's eyes narrowed. He asked the third young master for the great Dao fruits and enlightenment stones just to tease him. He did not really think that he could get them. However, the third young master really gave him the enlightenment stones and Dao fruits without tampering with them. From this, it seemed that the third young master had some ulterior motives. No. The more Ningyu thought about it, the more he felt that something wasn't right. He glanced at the twin-horned and winged demon beast, and was surprised to find that the twin-horned and winged demon beast's eyes were dull, and the aura within its body was somewhat weak. In this situation, it was obvious that he was being controlled. The third young master controlled the winged demonic beast. Ningyu was shocked. Luckily, he checked beforehand. Otherwise, if the third young master suddenly went berserk when he attacked the winged demonic beast, wouldn't he be in trouble then? The third young master's cultivation should not be an early stage, first rank, quasi-emperor. Ningyu gradually regained his composure and looked at the third young master. He discovered the third young master's cultivation was not an early stage, first rank, quasi-emperor, but a mid-stage, first rank, quasi-emperor. For a genius, even a small increase in cultivation level would increase their strength by several times. If the third young master was only an early stage, first rank, quasi-emperor, Ningyu naturally would not be afraid of him. However, if the third young master was a mid-stage, first rank, quasi-emperor, then Ningyu would have to think twice before attacking him. If the winged demonic beast suddenly attacked him while he was fighting with the third young master, the consequences would be unthinkable. Devour. Ningyu controlled the great Dao of devouring into the red fiend sword and started to devour the great Dao fruits and enlightenment stones. Qi. The great Dao of devouring devoured very quickly. In just a few seconds, it had devoured more than 10 enlightenment stones. However, when the third young master saw that Ningyu did not move, he immediately shouted, "Ningyu, you took my benefits. Are you not going to do anything?" At this moment, the third young master was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. He had painstakingly thought of this countermeasure to capture Ningyu and Aoshing in one fell swoop. Because of this, he did not hesitate to pay 1,000 enlightenment stones and 20,000 Dao fruits. But unexpectedly, Ningyu actually stood on the spot without the slightest intention of making a move. Could it be that something went wrong? Chapter 25:13. Ningyu glanced at the third young master, but did not say anything. Although the devouring speed of the great Dao of Devour was fast, it would take at least a few minutes to finish devouring the 1,000 Dao comprehension stones and 20,000 Dao fruits. Within these few minutes, anything could happen. Ningyu's thinking was very simple. He bet that the third young master would not dare to fall out with him too early. After all, the third young master should be unwilling to give up so many Dao comprehension stones and Dao fruits. The facts prove that Ningyu's thinking was not wrong. The third young master was indeed unwilling. He wanted to deal with Ningyu early, but he felt that he would lose the Dao fruits and Dao comprehension stones for no reason. Wait a few more minutes. The third young master took a deep breath and stared coldly at Ningyu. By now, the third young master had also discovered some clues. However, he still had a sliver of hope deep in his heart. Humans were like this. No, heavenly demons were like this. Although the third young master was the son of the Blood Sky Battle Emperor and was a mid-first rank quasi-emperor, he could not change this fact. Drip, drip. Time was ticking away. 3 minutes passed in the blink of an eye. Whoosh! When the 4th minute arrived, Ningyu slowly opened his eyes and let out a breath of turbid air. 3 minutes, 1,000 Dao comprehension stones, 20,000 Dao fruits. 299th. The great Dao of Devours ranking had risen from 350th to 299th. Boom! The increase in the great Dao of Devours ranking was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that Ningyu's cultivation had improved to early 1st rank quasi-emperor. Damn it! The 3rd young master finally realized the severity of the problem when he sensed the aura emanating from Ningyu. He had really been tricked by Ningyu. Very good, very good. The 3rd young master clenched his fists and looked coldly at Ningyu. I did not expect you to have a trump card. Hee, what trump card? You are just too stupid. Ningyu shrugged and said with a smile, the dual-horned, dual-winged demonic beast is a peak rank 1 quasi-emperor, and you are a mid-rank 1 quasi-emperor. The two of you are no match for me. Speaking of this, Ningyu paused for a moment before continuing. If you have any other trump cards, use them as soon as possible. Otherwise, you won't have a chance if I kill you. Ha ha ha. Hearing Ningyu's words, the 3rd young master suddenly threw his head back and laughed maniacally. The 3rd young master laughed, wildly, extremely wildly. Kacha! The 3rd young master laughed maniacally. The fragments of the middle-aged man on the ground began to merge automatically. In just a second, the middle-aged man had fused together and returned to his original appearance. Rank 2 quasi-emperor. Ningyu's expression changed slightly. The middle-aged man was a puppet. When Ningyu saw him before, his strength was on par with Ninglu. Unexpectedly, the middle-aged man's cultivation had already reached rank 2 quasi-emperor. In that case, the middle-aged man should be the 3rd young master's trump card. The 3rd young master crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked at Ningyu with interest. I'll say the same thing to you. If you have any trump cards, use them as soon as possible. Don't wait until I kill you, then you won't have another chance. Swoosh! However, just as the 3rd young master finished speaking, several figures appeared at the entrance of the palace. Quasi-emperors. Upon closer inspection, these martial artists that suddenly appeared were all quasi-emperors. There were a total of 9 martial artists. Among them, the Shengming Empires was a mid-rank 1 quasi-emperor. The survivors from the other 8 factions were early rank 1 quasi-emperors. It was obvious. When they crossed the 3-corpse river, they suffered some casualties. When they crossed the inner palace, some more died. At this point, there were only 9 martial artists left, and all of them were injured. However, when these 9 martial artists saw the pond behind the 3rd young master, their eyes lit up and they could not wait to rush into the pond. They were very clear. The pond was filled with Great Emperor's spiritual liquid. How much was there in a pond of Great Emperor's spiritual liquid? If they could enter the pond and soak in it, wouldn't they be able to break through? Gulp. The 9 quasi-emperors all swallowed a mouthful of saliva. However, they were not fools. In the main hall, the forces of Ningyu and the 3rd young master were already there. Ningyu's side was still fine. After all, whether it was Ningyu, Ninglu, or Ao Xing, their cultivation did not exceed early rank 1 quasi-emperors. There was nothing to fear. As for the 3rd young master's side, it was very troublesome. The 3rd young master was a mid-rank 1 quasi-emperor, and the 2-horned, winged demonic beast behind him was a peak rank 1 quasi-emperor. The most terrifying one was the middle-aged man, a 2nd-rank quasi-emperor, with a 2nd-rank quasi-emperor around. Their chances of obtaining the Great Emperor's spiritual liquid were very slim. Shishishu. The 9 quasi-emperors exchanged glances and immediately moved to stand beside Ningyu. In their opinion, no matter how weak Ningyu was, he would still be a great help. Let Ningyu charge in front and buy time for them. Then they could rush to the pond and obtain the great emperor's spiritual liquid, roar. However, dreams were plentiful, but reality was harsh. The 9 quasi-emperors had just reached Ning Yu's side when the third young master ordered the winged demonic beast to attack them. The third young master's heart was as clear as a mirror. The only ones who could pose a threat to him were Ning Yu, Ao Xing, and Ning Lu. As for the 9 quasi-emperors, they were all cannon fodder. He would first let the twin-horned and winged demonic beasts deal with these cannon fodder, and then he would go and settle the score with Ning Yu. Ning Yu knew what the third young master was thinking. He leaped and retreated to the other side. Rumble! The battle broke out instantly. The winged demonic beast was a peak rank 1 quasi-emperor. Its strength was unparalleled. Not to mention 9 quasi-emperors, even 19 quasi-emperors might not be a match for it. Damn it! Everyone scatter! No! Attack with all your strength and kill this demonic beast. What's there to kill? Charge! As long as we can enter the great emperor's spiritual liquid pond, we will be undefeatable. The winged demonic beast fought against 9 alone, but it did not seem to be at a disadvantage. On the contrary, it quickly defeated the 9 quasi-emperors. Some chose to retreat, while others charged toward the great emperor's spiritual liquid pond. Die! A quasi-emperor tried to kill Ning Yu as he charged out of the hall. Unexpectedly, his action completely infuriated Ning Yu. Ning Yu took out the red demon sword and slashed repeatedly. Uft! 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 Ning Yu did not want to get involved. However, since someone attacked him, he had to kill them. 3 swords. 3 quasi-emperors were killed. After killing these quasi-emperors, Ning Yu did not eat them alone. Instead, he stored them in the red demon sword for the Dark Emperor and the others to devour. Since he had already advanced to the early rank 1 quasi-emperor, devouring these peak rank 1 quasi-emperors would not be of much use. He might as well leave it to the Dark Emperor and the others. Chapter 25:14. Puff! 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 Just as Ning Yu killed 3 quasi-emperors, third young master attacked and killed 3 quasi-emperors who wanted to charge into the emperor's spiritual liquid pond. Puff! 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 In the middle of the battlefield, the double-horned, double-winged demonic beast also displayed its invincible might, killing the 3 sub-emperor experts. In an instant, 9 quasi-emperors died a miserable death. Ning Yu had no sympathy for the deaths of these quasi-emperors. After all, if he did not kill them, they would kill him. Under the temptation of a large pond of emperor spiritual liquid, these quasi-emperors would do anything. I can't waste it. Ning Yu's figure flashed and flew to the side of the quasi-emperors killed by the winged demonic beast. He executed a secret technique and sucked them into the red demon sword. It would be a waste not to take them. 3 quasi-emperors was a considerable fortune. If the Dark Emperor and the others devoured these quasi-emperors, their cultivation would probably reach peak Immortal King and even Dao Domain Realm. Now, let's discuss the distribution of the Emperor's spiritual liquid. Third young master did not even look at the remaining 3 quasi-emperor corpses and said to Ning Yu, 50-50. Let's not fight to the death. Half each. How about it? There's a problem with the distribution, Ning Yu said indifferently. After advancing to rank 1 quasi-emperor, Ning Yu was much more confident. The winged demonic beast could no longer pose a threat to him. The only thing he was slightly wary of was the middle-aged man beside third young master. Although he could kill a rank 2 quasi-emperor with his current strength if he used the great Tao of devouring, that would require some time. What if third young master suddenly attacked Ao Xing and Ning Lu while he was fighting with the middle-aged man? Wouldn't he be in a passive position? After all, Ao Xing and Ning Lu were only peak heaven receiving realm and not rank 1 quasi-emperors. If the 2 of them worked together, they would not even be able to block third young master's attack, let alone the winged demonic beast. What's the problem? The third young master raised his eyebrows and said, "Half each is the best way to divide it. If you don't agree, then we can only fight." In fact, not only Ningyu, but the third young master was also quite fearful. On one hand, he was not confident that he could kill Ningyu. On the other hand, there was a special formation at the bottom of the pond. If he wanted to take away all the great emperor's spiritual liquid, he would have to break the formation. If he didn't break the formation, he would only be able to obtain a limited amount of great monarch's spiritual liquid. He did not come all the way here just to get some great monarch liquids. His real goal was to take all the great monarch liquids, including the thing at the bottom of the great monarch liquids pond. Cooperating with Ningyu was the best way. "Sorry, I don't really want to work with you." Ningyu shrugged and said indifferently, "Unless you give me 80%, otherwise there's no need to talk." 80%? How dare you say that? The third young master's face turned ugly. Ningyu was indeed asking for an exorbitant price. Even he did not have the guts to ask for 80% of the great emperor's spiritual liquid. Was Ningyu really not afraid that he would order the middle-aged man to attack him? Or did Ningyu have another trump card? The more he thought about it, the more likely the third young master felt it was. It was very likely that Ningyu had another trump card, and it was a terrifying trump card that was enough to destroy everything. 60%, this is the limit. The third young master raised 6 fingers and said, "If you agree, we'll start fighting for the great emperor's spiritual liquid now. If not, we'll fight." The third young master unleashed his aura as he uttered the word fight. Bang! When the sound was heard, the third young master's aura had a breakthrough, advancing from mid-first order quasi-emperor to late first order quasi-emperor. Ningyu's face darkened as he felt the terrifying aura from the third young master. The situation seemed to have exceeded his expectations. Agree. Just as Ningyu was hesitating, Ao Xing's words suddenly rang in his mind. "There's a special formation in the pond of Great Emperor's spiritual liquid. I know where the weak point of the formation is. Let Ning Lu enter the red demon's sword later, and we'll break through the weak point together." Ning Yu was slightly stunned when he heard Ao Xing's words. Special formation? Could it be the control room? Ning Yu had heard Ao Xing mention this before. There was a control room in the Quasi-Emperor Palace. The control room could control the formation of the entire Quasi-Emperor Palace. Now that he thought about it, it was possible that the Quasi-Emperor Palace was below the Great Emperor's spiritual liquid. However, Ao Xing's next words made Ningyu toss this thought to the back of his mind. "My body is below. As long as I merge with my body, I can unleash the strength of a great emperor." Rumble! Ningyu's mind exploded, and he was slightly stunned. Strength of a great emperor? Could Ao Xing be a great emperor? Shaking his head, Ningyu took a deep breath and said to the third young master, "I agree. I want 60%, and you want 40%. Subsequently, Ningyu left a small mark on the surface of the pond and said, "This is the boundary. The left belongs to me, and the right belongs to you. Deal." The third young master seemed a little impatient. He leaped into the pond of Great Emperor's spiritual liquid and began to collect the Great Emperor's spiritual liquid. "You're quite good at pretending." Ning Yu sneered in his heart. Ao Xing had said that there were 2 weak points in the formation in the pond. One was on the third young master's side, and the other was on his side. The third young master did not seem to know the weak point of the formation, and was still pretending to collect the Great Emperor's spiritual liquid, fearing that Ning Yu would find out. However, he did not expect that Ning Yu knew the real weak point better than him. "Let's go." It was different from the third young master. After Ning Yu jumped into the pond, he did not collect the Great Emperor's spiritual liquid. Instead, he led Ning Lu and Ao Xing towards the weak point of the formation. At the start, Ning Yu wanted to let Ning Lu enter the Red Fiend sword. However, Ning Lu said that he felt something inside the formation attracting him. Therefore, Ning Yu could only let him follow. Boom! Ning Yu did not hesitate at all. He used the devouring Great Tao and attacked the weak point of the formation. How powerful was Ning Yu's full power? A crack appeared on the weak point that was already on the verge of collapse. Swish! 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 Ning Yu, Ao Xing, and Ning Lu seized the opportunity and entered the crack, disappearing. After they disappeared, the crack disappeared as well. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! On the other side of the pond, the third young master was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. He had calculated everything, but he did not expect this. Why did the formation have 2 weak points? He spent a lot of resources to find one weak point. Ning Yu, on the other hand, knew where the weakest point was and entered it easily. If he wanted to break the formation, even if he attacked from the weak point, he would need to spend a lot of time and energy. He might not even succeed even if he abandoned the dual-horned, winged demonic beast and the middle-aged man. Chapter 25:15. At the bottom of the pond. Ning Yu and the others didn't care how angry the third young master was. After breaking into the formation through the weak point, they were completely attracted by the scene in front of them, the advanced version of the Emperor's spiritual liquid. If the pond was the ordinary version of the Emperor's spiritual liquid, then the other side of the formation was the advanced version of the Emperor's spiritual liquid. Gulp! Ning Yu swallowed a mouthful of saliva and didn't act rashly. This place was full of strangeness. Now was not the time to collect the Emperor's spiritual liquid, because Ning Yu discovered that there were a total of 3 huge crystals not far from them. Looking carefully, a corpse was sealed in one of the crystals. This corpse was not in the shape of a human, but a true dragon. Obviously, this corpse was Ao Xing's body. As for the crystal next to the corpse, there was a small sapling sealed in it. The Tree of World. From Ning Lu's reaction, Ning Yu could tell that this sapling was the Tree of World. After taking a deep breath, Ning Yu shifted his gaze to the last crystal. The things in the first 2 crystals would definitely be taken by Ao Xing and Ning Lu. Ning Yu wouldn't fight with them. The last crystal was Ning Yu's target. I'm going to get it. However, when Ning Yu's eyes fell on the last crystal, he swore. The last crystal looked very smooth on the surface, but there was nothing on the inside. It was as empty as a field. Swish! Swish! When Ning Yu was probing the last crystal, Ning Lu and Ao Xing flashed and immediately rushed to the first 2 crystals. Crack, crack, crack! Ao Xing took out a golden hammer from his bosom and kept hitting the crystal. As for Ning Lu, a golden branch flew out of his body and began to drill into the crystal from top to bottom. Well, you guys got all the benefits. Ning Yu rolled his eyes and stood around to protect Ning Lu and Ao Xing. This was an unknown place, although there didn't seem to be any danger now. Who knew if there wouldn't be any danger later? After all, the third young master would never give up. Drip! Drip! Time was ticking away. In the blink of an eye, half an hour had passed. Kacha! Kacha! Half an hour was enough for Ning Lu and Ao Xing. Under their all-out attacks, the crystal suddenly cracked. Xiao! Ao Xing's face lit up with joy, and he hurriedly crawled into the crystal through the crack. Ning Lu was even more exaggerated. He stared at the crystal for a while, then opened his mouth and swallowed the crystal. Holy **T. Ning Lu's actions made Ning Yu somewhat dumbfounded. Swallowing the crystal directly? Is this even possible? At the same time, Ning Yu was very puzzled. Since he could devour the crystal, why did Ning Lu try to break the crystal in the first place? Wasn't that unnecessary? Shaking his head, Ning Yu temporarily threw these thoughts to the back of his mind. for him. The most important thing wasn't to care about what Ning Lu was thinking, but to pay close attention to the changes in the surroundings. Because when Ning Lu swallowed the crystal, there was a sudden trembling sound in the void. Ning, you didn't dare to determine who caused the trembling sound. Third young master, or other demonic beasts or humans at the bottom of the pond. Kacha! Suddenly, a crisp cracking sound rang out. Retreat! Ningyu leaped up and retreated hurriedly. Kacha! Kacha! Ningyu had just retreated a few steps when a huge cold light fell from the place where he was just standing, smashing a huge hole in the ground. Buzz! Immediately after, a familiar figure slowly appeared in their line of sight. Third young master! Seeing this familiar martial artist, Ningyu's expression turned ugly. Fortunately, he reacted in time, otherwise he would have become a corpse by now. You guys deserve to die. After the third young master appeared, his eyes swept across Ningyu and finally landed on the last crystal. There was no need to think. The third young master must have thought that the thing in the crystal was taken by Ningyu. Unbeknownst to him, Ningyu was also puzzled, not knowing who had taken the thing in the crystal. Go! The third young master didn't dare to be careless. Since they were already at the bottom of the pond, the core area of the Quasi-Emperor's secret realm, he decided to use all his trump cards. A white talisman was thrown out. As the third young master bellowed, the white talisman suddenly split open. Buzz! 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 Then, an illusory figure appeared in front of Ningyu and the others. Great Emperor! Not only Ningyu, but even Ao Xing and Ning Lu also stopped moving when they sensed the terrifying pressure emitted by the illusory figure. They looked coldly at the illusory figure, their hearts sinking to the bottom. Although the illusory figure wasn't a real great emperor, the pressure from his body had reached the realm of a great emperor. Most importantly, the strength of the illusory figure should be infinitely close to that of a fifth stage quasi-emperor, reaching the level of a peak fourth stage quasi-emperor. Ningyu and the other two. Ao Xing hadn't completely merged with his body, so he could only display the strength of a late first stage quasi-emperor. As for Ning Lu, he should be able to display the strength of a middle first stage quasi-emperor after swallowing the crystal. But even so, even if the three of them joined forces, they definitely wouldn't be a match for the illusory figure. Father! The third young master cupped his fists at the illusory figure and said, This is the deepest part of the Quasi-Emperor's secret realm. Please take care of these rascals. Humph! The illusory figure was Blood Sky Battle Emperor, or more accurately, a clone of Blood Sky Battle Emperor. He snorted and said to the third young master, You've disappointed me. Reflect on yourself when you go back. Yes. The third young master lowered his head to hide the hint of anger in his eyes. He had gone through all kinds of hardships to finally bring his father's clone here, but he had never thought that his father would treat him like this. Could it be that in his father's heart he really wasn't as good as his other two sons? The third young master could only hide the resentment in his heart and didn't dare to show it. After all, the strength of his father's clone was at the level of a peak fourth stage quasi-emperor. Come out. Blood Sky Battle Emperor ignored the third young master and said to the last crystal, After so many years, we finally meet again. Swish! Swish! In the surroundings, countless monarchs' spiritual liquid gathered towards the last crystal. The great emperor's spiritual liquid entered the crystal and caused it to explode. Swish! The crystal exploded. An old man in gray robes suddenly dashed out from the crowd. Blood Sky Battle Emperor. The old man in gray looked at Blood Sky Battle Emperor coldly and said in a deep voice, I'm not the only great emperor in the 100 Forest Territory. Aren't you afraid of being killed? Ha ha ha. Chapter 2516. Quasi-emperors started from the first rank to the 9th rank. Among them, the first rank to the 3rd rank were considered low-level quasi-emperors. The 4th rank to the 6th rank were considered mid-level quasi-emperors. The 7th rank to the 9th rank were considered high-level quasi-emperors. A powerful first-rank quasi-emperor might be able to contend with a 3rd-rank quasi-emperor, but against a mid-level quasi-emperor, he wouldn't even have a chance to escape. The difference in strength between low-level, mid-level, and high-level quasi-emperors was like heaven and earth. Blood Sky Battle Monarch's clone was a peak 4th rank quasi-emperor. According to him, if he could devour the gray-robed old man, his clone's cultivation would soar to the level of a high-level quasi-emperor. You can try. The gray-robed old man wasn't afraid at all. He looked at Blood Sky Battle Monarch coldly and said, "Don't you doubt why I let you in." "Let me in? How dare you say that? I can come in whenever I want. Who can stop me?" Blood Sky Battle Monarch said arrogantly. There were strong and weak great emperors too. The gray-robed old man at his peak was much weaker than Blood Sky Battle Monarch. Blood Sky Battle Monarch had a mental advantage over the gray-robed old man. "Haha, the ignorant are fearless." The gray-robed old man smiled and clapped his hands. "Come out, all of you. After hiding for so many years, I finally caught a big fish. Clap!" As the gray-robed old man clapped his hands, the void trembled and 2 more figures appeared. Whoosh! Whoosh! One was dressed in white and the other in black. The white-robed cultivator's cultivation was similar to the gray-robed old man's, peak 4th rank quasi-emperor. The black-robed old man was slightly stronger. Although he was seriously injured, his cultivation had reached the level of a 5th rank quasi-emperor. There were a total of 4 emperor-level experts in the 100 Forest domain. The gray-robed old man was Mutuo, Great Emperor. The white-robed old man was Wood Cloud, Great Emperor, and the black-robed old man was Wood Sea, Great Emperor. The other Great Emperor in the 100 Forest domain was called Wood Mountain, Great Emperor. He was currently guarding the core of the 100 Forest domain to prevent sky demons from infiltrating. Sure enough, they came prepared. Seeing the sudden appearance of Wood Cloud Great Emperor and Wood Sea Great Emperor, Blood Sky Battle Monarch's face turned extremely cold. Before he came, he had guessed that there would be more than one Great Emperor waiting for him in the depths of the Quasi-Emperor's secret realm. Because of this, he had prepared some backup plans, but he never thought 3 Great Emperors suddenly appeared. He took a deep breath. Blood Sky Battle Monarch spoke solemnly. "Do you think that the 3 of you can pose a threat to me by joining forces? I have to say, you guys are too naive." Rumble. His voice fell. Blood Sky Battle Emperor took out a palm-sized jade bottle from his pocket. He exerted a little force in his palm, and the jade bottle suddenly shattered. Then, a middle-aged man who was about the same age as Blood Sky Battle Emperor gradually condensed. Rank 5 Quasi-Emperor. The middle-aged man's cultivation was similar to Mu-Hai's, a terrifying rank 5 Quasi-Emperor. Fight! Blood Sky Battle Emperor did not waste any time. As soon as the middle-aged man materialized, his figure flickered and rushed straight towards Mu-Tuo and Mu-Yin. Xiao! As for the middle-aged man, he charged towards the sea of trees. A great battle broke out instantly. How long will it take for you to recover to your peak state? As Blood Sky Battle Emperor and the others fought fiercely, Ningyu quietly transmitted his voice to Ninglu, and Aoshing Ningyu now had a bold idea. Blood Sky Battle Emperor and the others were fighting fiercely and should have no time to care about the 3rd young master. Wasn't this the best time to capture the 3rd young master? If he missed this opportunity, there would be no more opportunities. Half an hour. 1 hour. However, Ning Lu and Aoshing's answers made Ningyu roll his eyes helplessly. 1 hour. The cucumber and vegetables were already cold. You guys recover here. I'll deal with the 3rd young master. Ningyu thought for a while and finally decided to attack the third young master. The opportunity would not come again if it was lost. Ever since he entered the immortal court, he had always been hostile to the third young master, not to mention that the third young master was a sky demon. Even if he wasn't, he would still kill him. At this point, it was already a situation of life and death. Swish! Ningyu wasn't an indecisive person. He gave an order, then leaped up and charged at the third young master. Humph! The third young master was a sensible person. He seemed to have expected that Ningyu would attack him, so he wasn't surprised to see Ningyu charging at him. Instead, he snorted and said, "This day next year will be the anniversary of your death." Ning, you couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with the third young master. What's the point of saying such harsh words? If you want to fight, then fight. What's the point of being arrogant now? No one would say anything even if he taunted as much as he wanted after he won. Wouldn't it be embarrassing if he failed miserably at such an easy task? Great Tao of Devouring. Ningyu used his full strength right from the start. He used the Great Tao of Devouring, which was ranked 299th. Even a lion would use its full strength to catch a rabbit, let alone the third young master. After all, the third young master was very powerful. If he didn't use his full strength, Ningyu wasn't sure he could win. Power of faith. Ningyu was aware of this, and so was the third young master. He took out a jade bottle and crushed it. A steady stream of faith power poured into his mouth. Gulp! As the power of faith entered his stomach, the aura of the third young master skyrocketed. Late stage First Order Martial Monarch, peak First Order Martial Monarch. In just a few seconds, the third young master's cultivation had skyrocketed to the peak First Order Martial Monarch realm. Go! Ningyu's expression didn't change much. Although the third young master's aura was increasing rapidly, once a martial monarch reached the martial monarch realm, he would need a lot of time to stabilize his cultivation. The third young master was different from Ningyu. Ningyu possessed the divine god of battle body and had cultivated it to the first form of the divine god of battle. Therefore, he didn't need to stabilize his cultivation. The third young master, on the other hand, needed some time to stabilize his cultivation. While the third young master was stabilizing his cultivation, it was time for Ningyu to attack. Whoosh! Ning, you controlled the Tao of Devouring to approach the third young master, while approaching the third young master from another direction with a red demon's sword in his hand. Kill! The third young master's eyes emitted a cold flicker as he faced the Tao of Devouring. Meanwhile, he took out a flying sword and collided with the red demon's sword. Ding! The two flying swords collided. Ningyu and the third young master were both sent flying. In the process of being sent flying, Ningyu raised his brows at the third young master and said with a smile, "This day next year will be the anniversary of your death." Nonsense! The third young master's expression turned cold. He was about to scold Qin Nan, but his expression changed drastically. He was shocked to discover Ningyu's Tao of Devouring had shattered the icy flicker that he had unleashed, and was now right in front of him. It was a critical moment. The third young master didn't have time to think. He quickly placed his hands in front of his chest, hoping to block the attack of the Tao of Devouring. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The dream was perfect, but the reality was harsh. The power of the Tao of Devouring was indeed impressive. Chapter 25:17. Damn it! Seeing his fist being devoured, the third young master cursed and hurriedly retreated. One had to know. After advancing to peak rank 1 quasi-emperor, the strength of his physical body had reached a terrifying level. Unexpectedly, the physical body that he was so proud of could not withstand a single blow. If he had not retreated in time, he would have become food in the devouring Great Tao's stomach. Swish! The third young master was not an indecisive person. He knew that he was not Ning Yu's match, so he immediately changed his direction and charged at Ning Lu and Ao Xing. Ning Yu was strong, but it did not mean that Ning Lu and Ao Xing were. After all, Ning Lu and Ao Xing were recovering at full force and could not spare any attention to deal with him. As long as he dealt with it properly, he might be able to make Ning Yu cautious and fearful. However, the third young master was obviously thinking too much. As soon as he arrived before Ao Xing's eyes sprang open as a terrifying aura was emitted from his body, suppressing the third child's figure in a crazy manner. Puff! 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 The terrifying aura made the third young master pale as he vomited several mouthfuls of blood. You! The third young master stared at Ao Xing in horror, his face full of disbelief. Rank 2 Quasi-Emperor. Although Ao Xing had not recovered to his peak state, his current cultivation had already reached rank 2 Quasi-Emperor. No, it should be a man compared to a dragon. It was infuriating. The third young master had gone through a lot of hardships and used the power of faith in advance to reach peak rank 1 Quasi-Emperor. On the other hand, Ao Xing only fused with his body and advanced to rank 2 Quasi-Emperor. The difference between a rank 2 Quasi-Emperor and a rank 1 Quasi-Emperor was huge. Even though the third young master was an outstanding figure among the sky demons and the son of the Blood Sky Battle Emperor, he could not make up for the gap between him and Ao Xing. After all, Ao Xing was a true dragon. Whether it was his body or talent, he was much better than the third young master. Run! The third young master was smart. Just one Ning Yu was already enough for him to have a hard time, let alone an additional Ao Xing. Maybe Ning Lu on the other side was about to break through as well. Rumble. The facts proved. The third young master's guess was indeed accurate, accompanied by an earth-shattering rumble. Ning Lu's cultivation directly soared from the peak of the heaven-receiving realm to the peak of the first rank Quasi-Emperor. The third young master was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. Under such circumstances, how could he fight against Ning Yu? With a flash, the third young master fled to the other side at a terrifying speed. However, how could Ning Yu let the third young master escape? This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, so he had to go all out. Therefore, the third young master had only taken a few steps when Ning Yu tore through the void and appeared in front of him. Bang! He clenched his right fist. Ning Yu's fist brought about a violent gale of energy. Even the great Tao of devouring was wrapped around his fist as he threw a backhand punch at the third young master's head. In desperation, the third young master gritted his teeth and immediately released the energy within his body to form an energy shield in front of him. He wanted to rely on this energy shield to block Ning Yu's attack. Unfortunately, dreams were plentiful, but reality was harsh. Crack! Ning Yu's fist easily broke the energy shield and bombarded the third young master's heart. In a split second, the third young master's heart was pierced, revealing a hole. The third young master looked down at the hole in his heart and opened his mouth to say something, but his eyes rolled back and he died on the spot. You deserve to die. As soon as the third young master died, the Blood Sky Battle Emperor flew into a rage. Although he did not particularly value the third young master, it did not mean that he could be killed. Humph! Blood Sky Battle Emperor, your opponent is us. Mu Tuo and Mu Yun naturally would not let the Blood Sky Battle Emperor leave the battlefield. They snorted and immediately surrounded the Blood Sky Battle Emperor. With the Blood Sky Battle Emperor's strength at the peak of the 4th rank Quasi-Emperor, Ning Yu and Ao Xing would not even be able to withstand one move from him. Let's go! Ning Yu knew that it was meaningless to stay any longer. Whether the Blood Sky Battle Emperor or Mu Yun won in the end, Ning Yu would not be able to help. Therefore, the most important thing for him was to leave as soon as possible to avoid being involved. First, He put the third young master's body into the red demon sword. Then Ningyu and Ning Lu tore the void and fled into the distance. However, not long after Ningyu and the other two left, a figure shot toward them from the battlefield at the bottom of the great emperor's spiritual liquid. Oh no! Ningyu's perception was very sharp. The sense of danger behind him caused his expression to change drastically. Without any time to think, he immediately moved his body to the side, wanting to avoid this fatal blow. Puff! However, even though Ningyu dodged with all his might, he still could not escape. A 5-fingered palm print appeared on his back and blasted him away, causing him to fall to the ground. How dare you kill my son? You should be prepared to be killed by me. As soon as Ningyu fell to the ground, he heard the Blood Sky Battle Emperor's angry voice. Now that things had come to this, the Blood Sky Battle Emperor already knew that he and the middle-aged man could not kill Muhai and the others. Instead of wasting time here, it was better to leave as soon as possible. If he stayed, if Muhai and the others still had trump cards, his clone would definitely be destroyed. After much consideration, the Blood Sky Battle Emperor finally made a decision. He would let the middle-aged man drag Muhai and the others away. As for himself, he would rush over to kill Ningyu and Ao Xing, then use a secret technique to leave the Quasi-Emperor's secret realm. You're quite stubborn. Battle Emperor Xue Tian punched out a second time without hesitation after his first attack succeeded. Swish! At the critical moment, Ning Yu immediately activated the devouring Great Tao, the red demon sword, and the divine war body to the extreme. With his current strength, it was impossible for him to withstand the full blow of a peak rank 4 Quasi-Emperor. Crack! Crack! Sure enough, even if Ningyu used all his trump cards, he was still like clay chickens and pottery dogs. The devouring Great Tao fell to the ground under the Blood Sky Battle Emperor's attack, its aura weakened. Several cracks appeared on the red demon sword, and it looked like it was about to completely shatter. Ningyu's body was even more exaggerated. His body cracked, and his flesh was a bloody mess. The first transformation of the divine war body could only make Ningyu's body as strong as a peak rank 1 Quasi-Emperor. To fight a peak rank 4 Quasi-Emperor head-on, he had to at least cultivate the divine war body to the 4th transformation of the divine war body, or even the 5th transformation of the divine war body. Die. When the Blood Sky Battle Emperor saw that his 2 attacks failed to kill Ningyu, he immediately flew into a rage. This clone of his was a bona fide peak rank 4 Quasi-Emperor. 2 attacks from a peak rank 4 Quasi-Emperor actually failed to kill an early rank 1 Quasi-Emperor. If this matter were to spread, how could he, the Blood Sky Battle Emperor, establish a foothold in the Immortal Court? There were 108 major domains in the Immortal Court. He would become the laughingstock of the other 107 major domains, never to be able to raise his head again. That you're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.